My entitled neighbors who I share a house with turned their upstairs portion into an Airbnb party house, putting me and my wife in a position where we literally could not get any sleep as there would be a party going on at all hours of the night regardless of the day. But after dealing with this for so long, I decided to get some petty revenge by not only shutting off the breaker to the house, but also deflating the tires of any guest that would come over and stay the night, eventually leading to the Airbnb receiving bad reviews all before we moved out. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to start off by saying that this is something I actually did 6 years ago. For starters, my wife and I used to live in the basement apartment of a 2-story house, and the upstairs neighbors decided to rent out his upstairs apartment floor to Airbnb guests during the week as a party rental. And when I say party rental, I'm talking like 8 to 20 people would rent this place out, and there was no off limits to when this could happen. It could be Monday to Thursday, Wednesday to Saturday, or just the weekend, and honestly, it was really stressful for my wife and I because I had started a new job and she was still getting her master's degree. The landlord was a friend of the upstairs neighbor and was totally okay with it. And at first, it was kind of tame, but then it got out of hand, especially when there were parties of at least like 16 people upstairs. Now, I tried reasoning with the upstairs neighbor, but nothing ever worked out. So what I decided to do was to mess with the Airbnb guests themselves to ruin their weekend. And I did it in 3 ways. For starters, I would kick them off the Wi-Fi router. I would just log in as an admin on the router and then look for new devices and then just kick them off. It was kind of funny because I could hear people upstairs complain that they had no internet, so I truly got a lot of satisfaction out of that one. Secondly, I would deflate their tires and make it look like there was something wrong with their car. Now, what I would do is go out in the parking lot out back at night, remove the tire caps off one of the 2 tires per car, and insert a small pebble into the cap, and then put it back on the valve stem, depress the plunger on the valve stem so it would leak very slowly over time. And then the next morning, the tires would be deflated, and the guests' morning or day plans would be completely ruined, as they would have to take the time to inflate their tires all over again. And on one occasion, someone called AAA just to have someone come out with a tire inflator. But the third thing I did is by far my favorite thing I ever did to any of the guests. And what I did was mess with the circuit breakers upstairs. All the circuit breakers were in the garage, that, by the way, I had easy access to from the basement apartment, and conveniently enough, the breaker panel was labeled with which room for which breaker. So if there's a party going on directly above my head where my wife and I were trying to sleep on a weeknight, I would go to the breaker panel and just switch the breaker off. And if it got too loud and it kept getting rowdy, I would just shut off the living room and dining room breakers and leave them off for like 20 minutes and then just flip them back on again. And if I was really sick of it, I would just turn off the breakers for the night and the one in the kitchen, and that would literally cause the fridge to shut down. And I'm pretty sure on more than one occasion, the food would really go bad in the fridge. Now, some of you might be thinking that's mean to take it out on the guests and not the guy upstairs who's hosting the Airbnb, and I think that's true, but this has been going on for so long, and I'd lost so many nights of sleep due to the partying upstairs that I just didn't really care. The Airbnb did start getting bad reviews for non-functional Wi-Fi and electricity problems, which really made it all completely worth it. In the end, we only could endure about 3 months of this crap before my wife and I found a much better apartment. Dude, I love this so much. I wish I had the guts to do something like this because I've had some crappy neighbors and dude, this would have been so nice to do. Like, I can understand you trying to like kick people off the Wi-Fi, like that is inherently like not that bad if you think about it, but to actually deflate someone's tires and shut off the breaker to basically ruin their food in the fridge, like holy crap, that is a brave decision to make. That's a pretty bold decision in my opinion, and I just don't think I have the guts to even come close to doing something like that. But regardless, I'm a big fan of what you did, and I think it's absolutely hilarious because ruining this guy's Airbnb business, in my opinion, takes precedent over anybody else's feelings, especially if they're going to disrespect you at all hours of the night. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled college student decides to make my life really miserable by the way they act every time they show up at my desk, forcing me to put them in their place in a way they will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to lead off by saying that this might be the pettiest I've ever behaved, but this person absolutely deserved it. So I have this part-time on-campus job as a front desk proctor at one of the dorms at northeastern Boston. Basically, I sit there, I check IDs, and I let residents and their guests into the dorms. It's a pretty straightforward job. The setup is simple. There's a desk in the middle, an entry door on my left, an exit on my right, and the card reader is on my right side of the desk. The normal process is people walk up to the front of the desk, they show their ID, they tap it, and then I let them in. It takes about 30 seconds and everyone does it this way. Well, that is, except for this one girl. She decides that standing at the front is just way too much work, I guess. So she walks past the entire front desk and stands on my left side near the entrance, expecting me to turn completely around, take her card, turn back to my right to tap it, then turn around again to give it back to her. She did this a couple of times and I was already annoyed, but whatever. I was busy with my own work and I didn't want to deal with it. But then she comes back later with her friend, putting on this fake accent, trying to impress them, and does the same thing again. Now her friend is standing at the front desk all confused like a normal person and quietly asks me, are we allowed to stand here? And this girl literally says with full attitude, yeah, it's more convenient for me to stand here than over there. And that's when I lost it internally. I took both their cards and signed them in, and instead of turning around to hand them back like she expected, I straight up slammed both cards on the far right end of the desk, complete opposite side from where she was standing. I then gave them a dead stare and went right back to my laptop like I just didn't care. Well, her friend had to awkwardly walk all around just to grab the cards, while Miss Convenient stood there processing what just happened. If it's convenient for you to make me turn around, then it's convenient for me to make you walk all the way around. Simple as that. Because sometimes you just gotta give people a reality check without saying a single word. Okay, I love this so much because holy crap, setting healthy boundaries works. Someone in the comment section said that and I couldn't agree more. Someone also asked the question I was thinking of, which is basically, okay, well, did this stop any of this behavior? Like, did she start standing on the correct side of the desk when she's coming into the dorms? And the original poster actually confirmed that yes, this corrected the behavior. So this is a complete success in my opinion. Like, this is amazing. This is absolutely the way it should be, and I just love that this worked out. Because every now and then, people like this absolutely need to be put in their place. My entitled boomer coworker let a customer leave our store without paying for their items, and despite the fact that I literally explained to her exactly what went wrong, she refused to listen to me until the very last second, allowing them to walk out with items they didn't pay for, which is something that absolutely could have been prevented. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so this week, my boomer coworker was not paying any attention while cashiering. The customer put in their card into the card reader incorrectly, and the card reader did not read it at all. The customer then grabbed their bag and just walked out, and as they were walking out, I told my coworker that their payment hadn't gone through. She didn't believe me and pointed to the screen, saying that they had paid, but it was pretty obvious that they didn't. I mean, if they had done so, the transaction would have been approved and the does the customer want a receipt option would have popped up. I then told her again that their payment didn't go through because they put their card in wrong, and I just pointed to the screen. She thought I was talking about the next customers that just walked up and said, oh, of course their payment didn't go through. They're new, they just got here. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me right now? I told her to look at the screen to show her that the register was still in bank card payment mode, and their card did in fact not go through. She then finally understood what had happened and walked out to the parking lot to find the customer, but they were literally long gone. She let the customer get away without paying, and they basically got a bunch of stuff for free because of her. Now you might be wondering how she didn't notice, but this cashier spends most of her time reorganizing, and that's what she was doing when the customer was paying, and I honestly hope she gets fired for that. I've got to be honest, I simply can't stand her. She makes absolutely no sense. When a customer asks for balloons, she'll pull the balloons out and start folding them and put them right back, and then start cleaning instead of getting the balloons filled up. She also talks way too much, and once she starts talking, she stops scanning items, and she's always the one doing the most. A customer will purchase a card and she will ask them how they want it back. She'll ask them, oh, do you want it in a bag? Do you need one bag and place that other bag in another bag? Do you even need a bag? I mean, who's the card for? And then she'll just rattle on and on about this person's business. But other times, she would just rather sit in the bathroom watching videos than cashiering. When she is scanning items, she treats it like a project and has to figure out which items should go with each other instead of just putting them in the bag. I'm honestly so exhausted dealing with her, and I really hope I don't have to deal with her any longer. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I completely relate with pretty much all the things you're describing here because this does sound incredibly annoying. But for me, the fact that she literally let people run out the store with items after they definitely didn't pay and refused to listen to you when you were trying to train her, like that for me is like absolutely grounds for being fired, which means I'm right there with the original poster. Having someone like that running the cashier is not a good idea, and in my opinion, they absolutely have to go because this is unacceptable. My entitled friend literally chews my ear off every single day about her problems. But after dealing with her mistreatment for so long, I eventually put my foot down and decided enough was enough, resulting in me blocking her simply because she was becoming so toxic. Here's how it all went down. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I have a 16-year-old friend who've I known for about 4 years when I lived in Canada. We're both 16 years old now, and I moved back to Korea about 2 years ago, so I haven't really seen her ever since then. As time went by, we kind of ran out of things to talk about, and these days I've been really busy studying because I'm preparing to take Korea's university entrance exam, so I don't have much time to contact her. Even though I've been busy, I still think about her a lot. Whenever studying gets hard, I remind myself that I want to see her again someday, and that just really gives me strength. But she really started having issues with me. She told me I was lying about studying and just pretending to study while actually playing games instead. And that really hurt me because I was working hard just for her. I'm trying to improve myself for both her and me, so hearing things like, "Oh, you don't even study," or even her asking why I'm lying about studying made me so angry. I mean, how could she say that to someone who's genuinely studying for their future? On top of that, she talks to me like she's trying to teach me or like prove me wrong all the time. Whenever I say something slightly off, she literally asks AI if I'm wrong and then mocks me about it. And that made me lose so much respect for her. But then there was this catfish incident. I rarely post selfies, maybe like once or twice a month on Instagram stories, but one day she saw my photo and called me a catfish, saying that I look totally different in real life. Now, I was furious when she said that, but I just held it in, and I chose not to respond even though I saw the message. She also got mad at me for not posting selfies on Snapchat anymore. I used to post my face for the Snapchat streak, but lately I just send random pictures like my wall or my figurines or some drawings because I don't feel like taking selfies every single day. Then she got angry and said, "Well, why don't you post your face anymore? You're pretty, why not show it?" And it's like, what? Whether I post my selfie or not is my choice. It's not something to get mad about. And honestly, she just treats me like her emotional trash can. Whenever she fights with her boyfriend, her parents, or friends, she dumps everything on me. I can listen sometimes, of course, but it became way too much. She always wanted me to take her side and agree with her, even when she was clearly wrong. She would say things like, "Right, I'm not wrong, right?" and basically force me to say yes. But people have limits, and she never even seems to notice that. She dumps all her problems on me almost every single day, and I always have to comfort and calm her down every single time when she tells me her problems. If I didn't answer her calls, she would say I was avoiding her or being a bad friend. But when we did talk, it would last for like up to 5 hours sometimes. I barely had time for myself or my studies because of that. And when I said that I needed to hang up, she would say something like, "Oh, 20 more minutes," and then just drag it out even further. And I'm not even kidding, sometimes it would even last 10 hours. And if I ever tried to set up a boundary, she would give me an attitude and make me feel bad for it. One time, I told her I couldn't talk because my teeth were hurting, and for reference, I'm currently wearing Invisalign, but I hadn't worn it for like 4 days and my teeth were really sore. I just said to her, "Hey, I can't talk today, my teeth hurt so much." But instead of showing any kind of sympathy, she just immediately started talking about herself. She said to me, "Oh, I had 2 wisdom teeth removed once, and I just got 8 needles into my jawbone, and I haven't been able to eat properly because they broke my teeth with a drill and they pulled them out." And then she went on and on about how she went through surgery and how painful her experience was, and it felt like my pain just didn't even matter. Well, after a while, I started listening to her less, and it's not because I didn't care, but because I was just emotionally drained. But then something happened. She sent an Instagram reel about advertise bait to one of her friends, and that friend said it looked fake. She then started teasing that friend, saying things like, "Oh, you're wrong, you don't know anything," which is the same way she treated me before. So I said very gently, "I kind of thought the same thing too. I mean, it does kind of look like a bait ad." But suddenly when I said that, she got really mad. She said to me, "Why are you taking her side? You never take mine." "Well, fine, I won't take your side either." Well, recently she started bad-mouthing that same friend again, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I said to her, "You know in life people lose friends and make new ones, right? You just have to learn from it and move on. I don't think I can help with this anymore, so please stop talking to me about her." But she said to me, "Okay, I get it. If you ever have anything hard going on, I won't listen to you at all." But the very next day, my hamster, who I really loved, got very sick. She had some really bad things going on, and after surgery, she developed sepsis. Basically, she was dying. Well, when I told my friend about that, she said to me, "Oh, you wasted your money on surgery." And at this point, I was absolutely furious. I yelled at her, "Are you insane? Why would you say something like that about my one and only pet? Basically, a member of my family." I was crying at this point because my hamster was dying, and she just replied by saying, "Just buy another hamster. I mean, it's a freaking hamster. Come on." But I couldn't believe that this is how she was talking to me. I asked why she'd say something so cruel, and she said to me, "Well, you didn't take my side before either. Remember when you said that's just how life goes? I'm saying the same thing now." And you know what? That was it for for me. I blocked her and I ended our friendship. But even after that, she never apologized. I told her, hey, whatever you're going through and what I'm going through are not the same. When someone loses a life, even a small one, what you should do is comfort them and not mock them. But even still, she blamed it all on me. So now I'm just left wondering, was it really my fault for not listening to her problems all the time? I mean, I know it's normal to listen to a friend sometimes, but constantly hearing about someone else's personal struggles and private issues until I'm completely drained is honestly super exhausting. What should I do? Oh man, consider this the greatest get out of jail free card you've ever received in your life. Someone said it best in the comment section, but dude, that is not a friend. This lady was a parasite and a complete piece of garbage. She didn't care about you at all. She just wanted some lifeless ear that she could chew off and tell all of her problems to, without you ever disagreeing with her or receiving any kind of support from her herself. Like, what a terrible person. Like, seriously think about it. When you told her that your hamster was dying, instead of being like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, that's awful, she instead decides to be like, oh wow, well I'm just gonna say the same thing you said to me right back to you. As if she was getting revenge for like some kind of comment you made. Like dude, that is so toxic it's not even funny, and honestly I'm kind of blown away that she did that. So honestly, you didn't do anything wrong, man. You did everything right. You tried to be a good friend, you tried to hear her out, but holy crap, she was absolutely full of herself. And even at the end of this friendship, she's still trying to like blame it all on you, and it's like, dude, she has no self-awareness. And that like really sucks in my opinion. So no, you didn't do anything wrong, and I would not worry about this for another second. My fiancé keeps betraying my trust after I've caught him twice now messaging other women, and at this point I simply don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I've been with my fiancé for about a year now, and for reference, we have known each other for more than 10 years. He proposed to me this summer, and we met each other's families, and he often said things like I'm his treasure, his win, and that he's so lucky to have found me. But from the very beginning, I discovered messages where he was flirting and sending sketchy messages to other girls, even going as far as trying to meet up with them. We broke up, but after some time apart, I decided to give him another chance. Now, things were good again, and we went on vacations together. We spent weekends at a cottage, and I really thought that we were moving forward. But then recently, I checked his messages again, and it's here that I found out in August while I was away on holiday that he was once again sending sketchy messages to another woman. They exchanged explicit photos and videos, and basically went way further than would ever be acceptable. He then said to her, we're gonna have to stop if things get more serious between us. And mind you, this was like 3 days of doing this crap. When I confronted him, he denied it at first, and then admitted to it and said that he regrets it. He says he wants to stay together and make things right, but I just don't know if I can ever trust him again. To add some context, I have mental illness, and I'm currently in a depressive state, which makes this even harder to deal with, and I feel like I'm losing myself in all of this. I really need someone to hear me out. I can't talk to anyone about this because if we stay together, they will hate me just like last time. I still love him deeply, but I don't know if love is enough anymore. I wish we could be together and for him to stop doing this to me. I mean, how can he plan a future and kids together and then just throw it away for some quick attention like this? What should I do? Okay, I gotta be completely honest with you. If you stay with this guy, this is you basically saying, yes, I think it's okay that you're cheating on me. And I'm not kidding when I say this, that would be so stupid because your fiance clearly has a fantastic hobby of messaging other women while you literally allow him to do it. Like, this is crazy. This is absolutely going to end in disaster and this guy cheating on you once you get married. Honestly, in my opinion, the first incident would have been like, no, we cannot stay together. This is not gonna work. So I know if I was in your shoes, and I can only speak for myself, if I found out that my fiance was doing this, I would break up and never look back. There would not be a second chance here because this is not only incredibly sketchy, but really messed up. This goes against literally everything that he says he wants from you, and in my opinion, just completely derails your entire life, and that's not fair for you. So hopefully this works out in your favor and you're able to see that this guy is not a good person because this really is incredibly upsetting. Am I the jerk for telling my friend to get a job and to pay me back after he literally has had nothing going on for over a year and a half? Because right now he is really pissed off at me, and at this point I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, for a bit of context, about a year and a half ago in July of 2024, my gaming friend group and I decided to do our first big meetup. For context, there are 6 of us in total, all of us guys around the same age, and this is our first time meeting in person. We decided that the place to meet would be in the city where 2 of us currently live. Two people drove in, one south of us in the same state and the other in the state next door, while the other two flew in from other states. We have all known each other for about 10 years, and we have grown close over this time. And the friend in question here is someone I will call Chris for the sake of the story, who flew in from Texas. I met Chris back in the day playing Destiny on the PlayStation 4 through people at the time. We clicked almost instantly and have been very close friends ever since then. While growing up, we talked about our family hardships, our childhood traumas, relationship problems, our struggles, etc. So we've really knocked down quite a few barriers in and of itself. Now, when it came time for this big friend meetup, Chris was having a hard time getting a plane ticket because he had just been fired from his job and he didn't really have any money. So he asked me to spot him, and I gladly obliged because I didn't want him to miss something like this. So I paid for his $400 ticket and we all met up and stayed at my place for a week. Now, since people had travel expenses and had taken time off of work, and since everyone in the group is employed except for Chris, I paid for things like the groceries, some outings such as dinner, and an amusement park. But at times when we were trying to split the check, I covered Chris's end every single time because he didn't have the money once again. After the meetup was all over and we were saying our goodbyes, Chris told me that he would pay me back all the money that I covered for him. I said that he didn't have to worry about the dinner expenses or anything like that, especially while he was here. But what I did say is that I just need him to pay me back for the plane ticket when he can, and that there's no rush in getting it done. Well, fast forward to now, and Chris has yet to pay me back the plane ticket, and he has yet to get a job for over a year and a half. And this is all since the meetup. Last night I asked him about getting a job and paying me back, and he said that he can't find a job. He puts in like 300 applications and gets like 0 responses. He relies on his mom's car and has no money to Uber to a job. So I told him that he needs to straight up get his stuff together. I care about Chris and his well-being, so I gave him some tough love, and I told him that he can't be living like this and that he needs to get out there and do what it takes to get a job. But every time I gave some kind of solution, he would say to me, "How am I supposed to do that with no car and no money?" All while continuously yelling at me. I don't even care about the money that he owes me, but it sort of sucks that I went so far out of my way for him and he can't step up the plate for himself. So honestly, am I the jerk here because I really just don't know what to do? No, you're definitely not the jerk, because honestly, this shows that you're a good friend. It shows that you care about Chris and you want him to improve his life. If I had a friend who just didn't say anything and was like, "Oh, whatever, do whatever you want," that would be a big indication to me of like, oh wow, this guy doesn't actually care about my well-being. And the fact that you're able to give him tough love, even if he doesn't like it, in my opinion, is a good sign that you're a good friend. So no, you're not the jerk, and in my opinion, I think Chris absolutely needs to get his life together, because currently he's got like nothing going on, and that is not fair for him or anybody else. An entitled Karen steals my entire vegetable garden, claiming that because she lives in the neighborhood, she has full permission to go into my side yard and take all of my vegetables. Things got so bad that we had to threaten to call the police on them just to try and get them to stop. Here's what happened. So to start off, we have a not so small vegetable garden in the backyard of my family's house. Me and my mom are the gardeners, and we grow a bunch of zucchini, snap peas, herbs, broccoli, carrots, tomatoes, all kinds of vegetables in the back garden. Well, one day, I hear something outside my window, which is right above the largest planter box in our garden. I look outside, and I see 2 kids from the neighborhood picking vegetables from the planter box. So immediately, I run out, and I see the 2 of them with arms full of zucchini and carrots, and even some tomatoes. I asked them what on earth they're doing, and they just said, "We live in the neighborhood," which seemed like a weird explanation. So I told them that those are our vegetables and they can't have them. But they just said, "It's our neighborhood too. We can have them if we want." And they then took off before I could stop them, literally vaulting over our small fence that separates our side yard from the neighbors. A few days later, I heard something out my window again, and I look out and I see the kid's mom loading up a basket with vegetables from the planter. I again rush out and see that this entitled Karen and her kids are loading baskets with everything they could grab. I watched as this entitled Karen grabbed a handful of chives that I had been growing and literally ripped them out, roots and all. My mom must have heard me run out because she came outside as well. She started screaming, demanding to know what they were doing in our backyard. All the while, the kids just kept picking vegetables, while the mom just turned around annoyed. She looked at us and said, "It's everyone's neighborhood and we need the food." And she said this still while picking from the garden, completely desecrating my prized chives. My mom then told this entitled Karen that if she had just asked us, we would have happily given her some of our vegetables that we spent so much time trying to grow. And even if it's everyone's neighborhood, it is our garden. This entitled Karen then huffed and puffed and left with her kids, and there literally wasn't anything that we could do about it. After the entitled Karen left, our garden was damaged beyond repair. Our zucchini plants were torn to bits, and the peas and tomatoes were trampled and shredded, and our grape bush that we had spent years growing was completely snapped in two at the base, where one of them had stepped on it. There were no fresh vegetables that year, and my mom couldn't make her chocolate chip zucchini bread that she normally loves to make. A few days later, we installed a lock on the backyard fence, and the neighbors came banging on our door, mad that we installed a lock, preventing them from getting into our garden. But my mom just told them to go away, and if she saw them in our garden again, she would call the cops. We thankfully never saw them again, and our garden is happy now, as my mom and I managed to bring the grapes back to life and tried our very best to restore the garden back to what it was. Fast forward, and not too long ago, we planted some blueberry bushes in our front yard, and as you could probably guess, someone keeps stealing them, and half the blueberries are gone each season. We let the kids in the neighborhood eat them, but they only take like 8 or 10 of them at most. There are 10 bushes in total, with about 100 to 150 blueberries on each bush, so it really makes you wonder who in the neighborhood would steal a couple hundred blueberries every year. Now, we haven't caught them yet, but everyone knows what's going on, and it's only a matter of time until this entitled Karen and her stupid children are caught in the act. What an awful situation. These people actually broke into your backyard and quite literally robbed you blind. I mean, they're taking baskets full of vegetables, and with that description alone, I can only imagine what kind of garden you must have had. It very clearly must have been something serious, and it must have been devastating to have all of that hard work literally taken away from you by some selfish entitled Karen who clearly did not care about you or your property. And I think you've made some really good steps moving forward to ensure that your stuff is not stolen in the future. And what kind of logic is that? It's our neighborhood, so we could do what we want. Yeah, sure, but it's not your property. You can't just go on someone else's property and start stealing from them. Like, that's not okay. That would be like going to my neighbors and saying, hey, I like your Christmas lights, but we're neighbors and this is my neighborhood too. So guess what? Those lights are mine now. And just start ripping them off. Like, no, you can't do that. That's not okay. So if anything, I really hope the original poster gets some kind of security system with cameras pointed directly at your garden as well as your blueberry bushes. That way, if they're stupid enough to try and come back to your house, you will have this entitled Karen on recording, because I honestly think that might be the only way possible that you can catch her in the act and have any hope of even proving it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My entitled coworker is on the verge of getting fired, and despite my attempts to try and help her in her situation, she decided to push me and my 25 years of experience on this subject matter off to the side, claiming that she could handle her termination meeting without my crucial involvement. And as a result, she dug her own grave and ended up getting fired. Here's what happened. So I work in a union shop, and I've been a shop steward for almost 25 years. In that time, I've seen some really crazy stuff, both figuratively and literally. And every single time, I've been unwary enough about how fate works to utter the words that now I've seen everything. But you know what? The universe will still inevitably hand me its beer and say, hey, watch this happen. Now, stewards, despite the general perception of us, are not there to defend employees who are accused of misconduct. We're there to defend the collective bargaining agreement, meaning that if you've really truly messed yourself up and your future with the agency we both work for, my role is primarily helping you determine which one of your options for leaving you're going to exercise. I've been at this rodeo for a long time, so management and I generally have a pretty good understanding of how things are going to go. So that is how we come upon Jackie. Jackie was one of those unbelievably toxic, peaked in high school cheerleader type of person with just enough understanding of what our employer does, how it's required to behave within federal guidelines, and what its obligations are, basically doing the bare minimum just to skirt the line. Now, to be clear, those things are not just the law, they're also morally right to be concerned about. And so my employer actually bends over backwards and does backflips to be absolutely certain that they're going above and beyond the minimum. Now, Jackie was not a minority in any sense. She was a female in a workplace that's 80% female, so that doesn't quite apply to this scenario. She may well have been disabled, but that was undiagnosed, and I'm inclined to think her claims of it, much like the rest of the things she said, were complete fabrications qualifications that she would just make up. So the point at which I got involved was at the tail end of over a year's worth of actions by Jackie, in which it rapidly became apparent that her manager was, in fact, an excellent candidate for canonization. I got referred to her when one of my other union friends contacted me and said to me, "Hey, Jackie just got put on administrative leave and it's complete BS. Can you help?" I get referrals like this a lot, both because I've been around forever and because I have a pretty good track record for ensuring that people accused of stuff that they haven't actually done get treated fairly. So honestly, nothing stuck out to me as odd. I contacted Jackie and she had absolutely no idea why management would put her on administrative leave without any warning, as well as confiscate all of her agency-issued devices, including her access, while also instructing her that she was not to have any contact at all with anyone she worked with during work hours. Now, this immediately sent off a whole host of red flags. For one thing, I know the senior HR guy that is the HR analyst's boss who's involved, having been down the road of difficult situations many times over the years. I don't always agree with him, but he is fair, and usually we can come to some kind of middle ground. But with that in mind, he would never suspend someone out of the blue without a really good reason. She knows what she's done. She simply has to. So I gave her my usual spiel of things to do and not do in this situation. I tell her, don't tell me or our employer things that aren't true, especially if you think it'll make you look bad if you don't. Also, don't talk to your coworkers. Don't talk to your friends about this, especially since you live in a town that has less than 2,000 people in it, and everyone knows everything about everyone else. Don't go to management or HR without me present, period. And when they do start asking questions, keep the answer simple. Basically, to the point, keep it short, and do not give lengthy explanations. Tell them what they want to know, and otherwise just shut up. Listen, I have been here and done this many times. I know this process very well. I can't tell you what they're going to do, but I can tell you what I think they're going to do. And I'm usually either right or pretty close to being right. Now, I have been surprised, but that doesn't happen often. Nearly 3 weeks then went by of radio silence from the agency, other than a bland sort of, "We want to talk with Jackie about utilization of work assignments, as well as some tasks and equipment." And this all came in an email that almost tells you nothing while still being literally true. Eventually and finally, it was go time for a meeting, and I did something I haven't done in a really long time. I physically drove to Jackie's work site instead of attending virtually. It was about an hour and a half each way, but I mean, why not? The weather was nice, so I just went ahead and did it. We met up ahead of going in, and I asked her if she remembered the rules I gave her at the beginning. She said that she did, and I asked her if she would follow them, and she said that she would be very careful, so we went in with that in mind. During the meeting, it was almost immediately obvious to me, from the questions that they started asking, that Jackie was in serious trouble. Not like written warning or pay reduction, nothing so simple. They were going to go for termination, and she was probably going to be very lucky if they decided not to refer to the DA for criminal prosecution. Here's an abbreviated summary of just the high points that basically put Jackie in hot water. For starters, Jackie had hundreds of confidential documents and electronic files in her personal possession, many of which fall squarely under HIPAA. She emailed these out from the government system to one of the 4 or 5 personal email addresses that she maintains. Jackie had also logged overtime without permission, and she did this a lot. And on one memorable date, when she was vacationing in Europe with her family at the time, she said that she called in to attend a meeting, but did not have an answer why that meeting had apparently been 11 and a half hours long, and nobody remembered her attending by phone. Jackie also had audio recordings of disabled and elderly people with whom she was working with, and that she had taken this kind of recordings without their consent or knowledge, and she did this a lot. Jackie's overall work product and system activity reliably showed that she was logged in at the start of the day from her home, and she worked some in the afternoon, but there were hours and hours of time when her computer was just simply idle. She explained this as participating in union activities, which I knew was complete BS. Now, Jackie is not a steward. Jackie has no idea what the collective bargaining agreement actually says about much of anything, beyond assuming that stewards can do whatever they want and management can't say anything, which is incredibly uninformed. At any rate, steward activity must be recorded and time-coded as such. Now, there is more than just this. There's so much more, but in the interest of brevity, I will summarize the next 4 months of my dealing with this woman by pointing back to the cardinal rules I gave her and simply inform you that she broke every single one of them, and I mean a lot, when it finally got to the dismissal dismissal hearing that comes before the "you're fired, get out of here" letter, she told me going in that she wanted to run things because she had some stuff that she wanted to cover that she thought I probably wouldn't be comfortable doing, which is true because it was irrelevant. And also, she claimed that I didn't know much about the situation in general, so she felt like I wasn't really on her side in this situation to begin with. I look at her and I say, I really don't think that's a good idea. I have done a lot of these and you really should let me handle it. But Jackie looks at me and says, no, I know what I'm doing, and I talked to my attorney about this a lot. You can't stop me. I look at her and I say, yeah, you're right, I can't. But this isn't going to go the way you think it will. Jackie kept saying that she knows she's right and that they can't do this to me. But I said to her again, this is not a good idea, but okay, it's your show, go for it. So in we went and I sat down. The senior HR guy I mentioned earlier was there, and he gave me a funny look when I sat back with my laptop closed and said nothing. Dismissal meetings are actually our meeting, and we get to run them from start to finish. Everyone else is there just to listen. She started talking, and I have to give them credit, they took notes. They listened to the things that she said and kept straight faces the entire time, and it went exactly as I figured that it would. Just the things they'd asked her about in the first several meetings I attended with Jackie had covered fireable offenses on at least 4 or 5 different subjects, all independent of one another. At the end, when she finally wound down, they all turned to me, Jackie included, and asked if I had anything I wanted to cover or that I thought may have been missed. I looked at them all and I said, nope, I think she covered everything actually. I don't have anything to add. That afternoon, I got the union copy of her dismissal notice. Generally, they are open to at least discussing the option of the worker resigning and giving them a neutral reference going forward, but that wasn't in the cards. The last I had heard of Jackie, the Department of Justice was involved with her and her husband, and I'm reasonably confident that it didn't go well for her either. I do know that she will never work for the government again, as the letter was pretty explicit about what information they would release to any government agency asking for a reference. So as it went down, they had more than enough evidence to terminate her completely, and it literally is her own fault. Yeah, Jackie sounds like she was in a lot of trouble, like serious hot water. Not only was there time theft, but she was recording people without their consent and transferring electronic documents that were super confidential. Like, in my opinion, that lady definitely deserves to get fired. And the way that she was treating the one person who was gonna be on her side and basically pushed her aside and said, no, I'm gonna handle it. I bet at this point Jackie's probably kicking herself, because I bet the original poster, who has been doing this for 25 years, mind you, probably could have saved them to some extent in this situation. So honestly, this is not anybody's fault except for Jackie's. The original poster is not a jerk, and they did the right thing. I mean, Jackie made her wishes very clear. She wanted to handle the meeting that she literally did not know what she was getting into. Because at the end of the day, I bet the original poster, even if they were involved in this process and tried to say something on the behalf of Jackie, it probably still would not be enough to save her from the hammer of justice that was very clearly falling on her. So I guess the moral of the story is that sometimes you just gotta look to the person who clearly knows what they're doing. And if 25 years of experience isn't enough evidence for you to understand that, yeah, they probably can help you get out of this mess, then just like with Jackie, I literally don't think anything could save you here. My wife is lying about our son beating her at chess, despite the fact that she is rated 2300 and is incredibly good. And I simply can't get the truth out of her, and I don't know what to do. So I have an odd and very specific issue with my wife, and I wanted some perspective on it. So for a bit of context, my wife is really good at chess, and I mean like really good. She used to play in tournaments. She is a titled player, with her peak rating being about 2350, so she is very good. And for context, I am not very good. I enjoy the game, but I am nowhere near her. My online rating is maybe half hers if I'm lucky. Recently, our 10-year-old son has started to show an interest in chess, and we have been teaching him the game. Before we began teaching him, my wife and I had talked and come to the agreement that it would not benefit him to go easy on him or let him win. It was better to play at our actual strengths and help him understand the game, help him learn to analyze his games, replay the critical positions, and understand where he could make improvements or choose a different line to play in the game. We were totally on the same page for this, completely in agreement. However, when my wife plays with our son, she has been letting him win. Mind you, she is 2350. She is incredibly good. Now, she is obviously not playing anywhere near her real strength, and after about 30 games between them over the course of the last few weeks, he has a positive score against her, which is crazy. For context, context, over the 16 years that we have been together, I've had about 1,000 games with my wife. And out of all of those games, I have never beaten her. Not once, not ever, not a single game. She just demolishes me, completely rolls me off the board. Once, about 5 years ago when she had the flu, I drew her in a perpetual check from a losing position, and I was very proud of that. I hold that as one of the strongest games I've ever played. The only way I'm winning a chess game against my wife is if she falls asleep at the board and I win on time. She is just that far beyond me. Now, here's where the issues begin. When I try to talk to her about it, she just straight up lies to me. She flatly insists that she's playing to her full strength and all of his wins are legitimate, which is simply not true at all. And before I get the suggestion of somebody saying that he might just be a prodigy of some kind and that the two of them are playing at the level that I can't understand, that is simply not the case. I have observed their games and he is playing like a beginner. I have even plugged some of their games into an engine and the engine will just break down crying at how bad the play is on both sides. It's not a subjective interpretation. These games are objectively bad. My wife is simply refusing to capture hanging pieces for multiple turns, intentionally making bad trades, making anti-positional moves that make no sense, refusing to execute extremely simple combinations that even I can see. Like, my wife can see mate in 3. She can probably even see mate in 15. So the idea that she is just simply missing those things is absolutely nonsensical. Now, when I play my son, I completely crush him. I'm not blaming him, he's still learning the game, but he's still at the level where he can fall for the scholar's mate and making one-move blunders. That's just where he is. When I try to talk to my wife about it, she insists up and down that she's playing as well as she can, and she's so earnest about it that it's almost like she genuinely believes it. I'm going as far as even beginning to worry about some kind of mental illness. Like, I have no idea what is going on here. I've never had anything like this with her because normally we are very communicative, so this really is out of left field for her and truly very odd. I've tried talking with her about it multiple times now, but I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I don't even know how to discuss this with her when we can't even agree on what is objectively happening in reality. It's like trying to discuss how to build a sailboat when you can't even agree on what water is, or if cloth and wood are things that actually exist in reality. I don't even know how to start a conversation here. As it stands, my son won't play with me anymore because I always win and it's disheartening for him. If it was simply a case of my wife seeing that he needs a confidence boost, as well as her changing her mind about letting him win, I of course would have zero problem with that. I'm 100% on board. We can totally do that. I've even said that directly to her, but she's very adamant that she's not going easy on him in any way. The issue isn't that she's letting him win, it's that she's refusing to admit it. It's just so bizarre. She's just blatantly insisting that reality isn't real, and I honestly don't know what to do. It's pretty obvious that your wife is letting this kid win. She's rated 2350. That is not an easy rank to get to. For context, most people would not get ranked higher than 1800. Like, that is probably the peak of most people in the world. So she is a cut above the rest, almost in the professional standard. So I completely agree with the original poster here. She is absolutely letting this kid win. But honestly, it's probably for the best. This kid has already decided that he's not going to play against the original poster because they keep losing all the time. There's no confidence boost, there's nothing like that, and it's no longer fun. So it's not out of the question for her to just completely let this kid win. But I think there's also some kind of pride issue going on. I don't think she's mentally declining. I think she literally just doesn't want you involved in this process, or at least it kind of seems that way. She most likely just wants her son to have some kind of interest in chess. That's my perspective at least. Maybe she thinks that if she just lets him win and allows him to gain some kind of confidence, that eventually she can get him up to a level where he would be really, really good. And I also really don't like the original poster's approach to trying to play his wife when she's sick just to try and get a win. Like, I get it, you're not that good at chess, but it seems like it's almost obsessive for you at this point. Like, your wife is clearly encouraging him to do better, whereas you are just trying to win. And hopefully you can see the difference of opinions. And maybe the reason why she can't talk to you about this specifically is probably just that. She probably just can't talk to you about it. You can say that you're on board and you want to teach this kid chess, but compared to her, you literally don't know what you're doing. So hopefully there's some kind of middle ground that can be found here. Because based on what you've described, I think there might be some stuff going on with the way you act that's causing her to want to shut down and pretend like he really is playing at his best. Because at the end of the day, he is a 10-year-old kid, and if he doesn't enjoy this game, then he really will drop it aside and never play it again. My entitled aunt plays her Christian songs at all hours of the night, and despite my my honest request for her to simply turn them down so I can try and get some sleep, she takes it personally and basically implies that I'm trying to censor her, which honestly is not the case, but at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I want to open this off with a statement that I have nothing against people of religious faith. I understand that our ideals do not align, and I respect that. With that out of the way, I want to tell you about an unpleasant trait that my aunt has that bothers not just me, but also my neighbors. My aunt has been resurfacing lately her faith. She is Roman Catholic, and she recently hit a rough patch in her life, and she found solace again in religion, and she won't hesitate to let you know. She'd tell you about how she cries every time in worship, how she'd always somehow work her faith into the most absurd of topics. We generally seem to get along, aside from one altercation where she expressed disgust towards my personal preference in who I do and don't find attractive. But other than that, she treats me well, and at the end of the day, respects me as a person. And by respect, I mean that in the sense that she at least has the decency to at least hide her distaste in me based on my personal preferences of who I find attractive, if you know what I mean. She is generally a very nice person and has little to no beef with anyone in her life. That is, except for how she chooses to continue her faith. Aside from what she already does with her faith, another way she'll let you know is by playing loud variations of praise and worship hill songs. She would play these songs even in the dead of night, where everybody who is normal would be asleep. She'd have Christian rock in the background playing at all hours of the night. Granted, I don't fully understand why she does this, but I also know that you really shouldn't do this when almost everyone in the neighborhood unanimously agrees that you should maybe tone it down a bit, especially in the middle of the night. And in fact, one time I tried to do that, and when I asked her if she could just turn it down, she got a bit touchy and asked me if I even understood God at all. The point is, I don't really, but it's irritating having the same old song played over and over again. It also doesn't help that it wasn't exactly the genre I was into. I once turned her music down, and she turned this into some kind of argument with a rant about how I don't appreciate the things that she does for me. My parents are practically non-existent anymore. We've been living with her since their falling out, and yes, she does provide for the house. I also do try and chip in with the work regularly, and I carry mine and my sister's weight every now and then. But back to the music thing. We'd all be kept awake each night with some kind of praise song or some variation of it, playing at all hours of the night. And if that's not the case, when I do schoolwork at home, it was honestly very hard for me to focus. She wouldn't turn it down, not out of spite, but she really legitimately just did not want to. I want to set up some kind of intervention with her and my grandparents soon to try and get this thing out of the way. It's also probably worth mentioning that we had never gotten a single noise complaint ever, just slightly annoyed neighbors irritably knocking on our door. But with all things considered, I honestly don't know what to do. It really does seem like your aunt is really being disrespectful towards you. Like if she wants to worship and have some kind of faith in whatever she believes in, then go for it. And I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with playing music that is affirming towards your faith. That's probably a good thing, and it probably helps her feel better about herself, as well as more connected towards her faith. Like literally, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But she's being very belligerent about it and refusing to turn down these songs, especially in the middle of the night. I mean, I really don't think it's irrational to simply ask her to turn down the music. This is not about you trying to limit her faith or in some way try to censor her from not expressing her faith openly. That's not the point here. The point is that she's making a lot of noise and it's disturbing your peace. And sure, you haven't gotten a formal complaint about any kind of noise, but that doesn't give her the right to play her music on full blast in the middle of the night. That is disrespectful and very unkind to those around you. And you can bet that if the roles were reversed, she would not be happy with you playing your music when she's trying to sleep. So hopefully there's some kind of middle ground here, because I think what you're asking for is not that big of a deal, and it really does seem like she's making mountains out of molehills in this situation, and that in and of itself, in my opinion, is super obnoxious. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My ex kicked me out and ghosted me after a messy breakup, but after finding out that I'm struggling with a serious mental health disorder, I feel like I deserve a second chance with her, but I'm honestly not sure and I simply don't know what to do. So I met my ex a year and a half ago, initially hooking up based on physical attraction, but slowly turning into a real relationship as we got closer. It became a very loving and fulfilling relationship, but we both suffered from depression and would end up fighting over something small once a month. As she had issues with her anger, Usually I had done something and just needed to apologize for it, but her overreactions made it difficult for me, and I wouldn't back down. Eventually, as this anger got worse, I would break down and enter a depressive episode that caused some terrible thoughts. And these awful thoughts had only been triggered before by alcohol. I was also entering a deeper overall depression, letting my weight go and losing my job temporarily. Before Christmas, things got worse, and eventually she disappeared on Boxing Day. I went into an episode and called her over and over again, messaged her friends, and massively overreacted. That night, we agreed to end the relationship. We were living together at this point, and she just stopped talking to me almost immediately. She would barely be home. I would plead and plead to talk about it or to work it out, and she would refuse. On New Year's Eve, I had another episode triggered by drinking too much and sent her some nasty text messages. As I had become paranoid, she was seeing someone else almost immediately. When I woke up and read them, I couldn't believe all that I had written. I was disgusted in myself, and I knew I needed help. She kicked me out immediately and completely ghosted me. The few days after I was kicked out, I gained a new perspective on things and became extremely overconfident, working out how I was going to fix my life, and tried leaving her flowers at her place, which I understand now was inappropriate, but seemed like a great idea at the time. I have since talked to my doctor and a therapist since then, and they think I might be displaying signs of bipolar disorder, as my father had it and my manic and depressive episodes match over the last few months. I don't believe it excuses anything that I did, but I do think it changes the situation. I sent a short, respectful text message telling her that I may have it and apologizing for how I handled things, but she read it and continued to ghost me. Now, this post may frame her as being an angry or terrible person, but she is a kind and lovely woman that was very damaged from her upbringing and cuts anyone who hurts her from her life. I now realize how easy it would be to deal with her issue if I was in a healthy mindset and medicated. I have continued putting everything into getting healthy physically and mentally. My question to you is, do you think I deserve a second chance if I'm diagnosed with a legitimate mental illness? I'd love some perspective on this complicated topic, as I honestly don't know what to do. So to answer your question, do you deserve a second chance? Absolutely. There's no reason you can't find another relationship and try again, knowing exactly what you should and shouldn't do, as well as what your triggers are and all the things that go along with managing your mental health. But do you deserve a second chance with her? Absolutely not, in my opinion. There's no way you should force yourself back into her life simply because now you understand what's going on mentally. And she has no obligation to let you back in. She doesn't owe you a second chance for any reason. You were not managing your mental health and you freaked out on her. And that's not her fault or her responsibility to take care of. So in my opinion, I think you need to take her breaking up with you as a serious endeavor and move on with your life, because clearly you have some kind of obsession with her and you think maybe I can get back with her. Maybe I can change her and she'll see what I really am now. But in reality, the more you try to contact her, the more creeped out she's gonna be. Like seriously, that relationship is over and it's time to move on. She very clearly does not want to engage in any kind of conversation, and she herself is probably hoping that you will just stop. So honestly, you'll be a lot better off if you just leave her alone. She is trying to move on with her life, and if you were wise, you would do the same for yours. A father calls our restaurant to make sure that his children left a tip, which really impressed me and really makes me want to meet this guy in person for his generosity and his charity. So for a bit of background, I work at the main restaurant of a pretty large resort in Texas. An important thing to note about our resort in particular is that we have a membership program where in exchange for a monthly price, you and your family would have access to all the resort's facilities, get special privileges, and have your own discount to use. As you would probably guess, these memberships aren't at all cheap, and our members are usually really wealthy business people with lots of time and money to burn. A lot of these members also have children or grandchildren that also have permission and privileges at the resort as well. Also, most of the members are also locals in the area, living pretty much right next door to us. It goes without saying that many of these people are indeed somewhat entitled and expect a lot from us because, well, they pay tons of money. Of course, that doesn't mean they're allowed to treat us like lesser beings, but we are expected to do what we can to accommodate them to the best of our ability. However, there are many of these people who are actually very sweet and charitable people, despite the wealth that they come from. Anyways, on the day our story takes place, I was operating the restaurant host stand and was somewhat bored due to it being a bit of a slow day. Enter Jack and Jill. One was 14 years old and the other one was 11. And these two siblings had parents who were members at the resort. While I'd never met their parents in person, I knew the kids very well, as they would frequently come to the pool bar that I worked at during the summer. They walked up to the host stand with two very expensive-looking scooters in tow, which they apparently got for Christmas. They wanted to order food to go, which was one of my duties as a host, so I did as I was told, and I gave them the check to sign while they waited for their food to arrive. Now, I'll mention that while my job in this position is just to bag the food and hand it to the customer, there is still an option to leave a tip. Unsurprisingly, this isn't a thing that often happens, because while a waitress would serve you drinks and check in on you, I would just be handing you your food. But some people are charitable enough to give something. Strangely enough, Jack and Jill said they wanted to leave us a tip, and we're calculating it together. While the tip wasn't groundbreaking in any way, everything counts, and I thanked them before sending them on their way. Now, I thought that would be the end of it, until about 10 minutes later, when I get a call from our phone. It was the kid's father, calling to ask if his children had been by to get food, and if they left a tip behind. I actually laughed, because his kids were sitting patiently at a couch, waiting for the food as we talked on the phone, and I told them that they did. He also laughed, and asked me how much they left and thanked me. He told me that he has been teaching his children the importance of leaving a tip for service workers like myself, and how to calculate the amount you leave behind. He called just to make sure that they had done what he had asked, and if the amount was correct. I told him thank you for caring so much about us, and he gave me a nice goodbye before hanging up. It made me smile to think there were people out there, especially those probably in better financial positions than others, who are taking the time to teach their young children the importance of leaving a tip. I've met other children just like this, some even younger. I even met the daughters of our resort's owner, who was nothing but polite to everyone and left a tip for our waiter. She was probably only 10 years old at the time, and that still sticks with me. Honestly, it gives me hope, knowing that the next generation is being set up with this kind of knowledge, especially so early in their lives, and I'm looking forward to seeing this more. And I really hope to meet this father in person someday. Taking the time out of your day just to call a restaurant to see if your kids left a tip for their server is something I'll always think about fondly. That really is a great story in my opinion. It's always nice to see that people are willing to give tips to service workers, especially people who work in the restaurant business, because that can be really rough sometimes, especially in the United States, where you really do rely on tips to try and make ends meet. So it's personally really good to hear that the original poster got a tip for their service, and hopefully this continues at the job they're working. My boyfriend keeps changing his mind on marriage, and it's really stressing me out, and I don't know if I should stay with him. And at this point, I don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I are together for about 3 years, both of us in our mid-20s, and we met on a dating app. I was going through it at the time, as I just got my heart broken by a guy I was seeing for a few months and became extremely depressed. So we didn't discuss anything like marriage or kids initially, as I honestly didn't think this would last more than a few months. Fast forward a few months, and he out of nowhere asked what I think of marriage and would I ever want to be married. I panicked because I thought he was about to propose, and then got extremely emotional. I started crying because I was still not over that previous guy completely, so he backed out. As time went on, I became extremely attached to him, eventually moved in, and thought he was the one for me, as he was caring and thoughtful, as well as completely respectful of my boundaries. Over time, I started thinking about marriage more and more. We attended his older brother's ceremony, but none of our friends are getting married, so I don't think I'm influenced in that way. He kept brushing off the questions, saying he doesn't feel that way yet and that he needs time. In the last year or so, I felt more and more like he is stringing me along, not wanting to let go but not ready to move on himself. We are planning to move, maybe abroad eventually, but recently during an argument, he admitted he's mainly doing it because I want to. He's constantly saying he's not ready to marry yet, but maybe in the future he would, though he never specifies when or how he would get there. Eventually saying that if we decide to have kids, then it would be time to get married. And I'm feeling very anxious about having kids, and he knows it. So even that doesn't feel like a real thing. I kept pushing, and eventually he admitted that he's scared of commitment, as well as not being able to leave once we have a house and kids together. And he also wasn't sure if he wanted to break up with me, and he wouldn't want to do that if he made this kind of commitment. I am generally feeling more and more terrible about myself, and overall feeling really depressed and anxious constantly about it all. I can't help but have the thoughts that if I was just a better girlfriend to him, if I was smarter or prettier, he would want to marry me on the spot. And it's honestly such a destructive mindset. My mother is also also very invasive, constantly pushing that maybe he is not the guy for me, while also questioning why is our relationship not moving forward, with the implication that he simply doesn't love me. And I don't want to let it get to me, but it does. My boyfriend generally says that he wants to be with me long term, and that he does love me. I just don't know if I can settle for never getting married, or if this is just an insecurity that I have, or if this is a sign that the whole relationship isn't working, and I'm just hyperfixating on the marriage part. There were times when I considered leaving him a lot, but I generally have nowhere to go. I come from a household that was very awful to me, where my parents were belittling me and did not accept any of my choices. So I ran away to live with my boyfriend because I was afraid of my future. I really do love him, and currently I'm not feeling okay with leaving him or finding someone new, because we have a lot of history together, and I always imagine him being the one that I settle down with. Should I work through the marriage thing myself, or is it time to leave? What should I do? This is definitely a tricky situation, because it sounds like you do want to get married, but your boyfriend is kind of dragging his feet about it, so I can understand where you're coming from. But I think it's also important to remember that you're both in your mid-20s. Maybe it's just me, but you're still very young. You've got a lot of time to figure things out, and just because he's hesitant on getting married right away, or at least in the near future, it doesn't mean that you can't still be with him. And if you eventually know that, yeah, you don't want to be with this guy, then you can let that be your answer. And I don't think it makes you the jerk or any kind of bad person simply because you're trying to figure your life out. So I think some healthy communication could really go a long way in this situation, because once you sync up your timelines for the both of you, you can really understand what it is you both want and then move forward from there, whether staying together or finding someone new. My girlfriend is constantly asked to clean our house whenever she comes over, and she is now upset that she has to do that, and she is now refusing to come over, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my girlfriend and I are both 22 years old, and we've been dating for 6 months now. At her house, she does all the cleaning for her siblings and picks up after her brothers, because both of her parents work very long hours. My mom is a stay-at-home mom, so she takes care of all of that. My parents never expected me to clean or do any house chores. When staying over, my girlfriend asked me where the mop was. I didn't know, so I asked my mom, and she told me to go tell my girlfriend to clean. The same thing happened another day when I asked where the vacuum was. She said the same thing again, tell your girlfriend to clean. And I didn't tell my girlfriend what my mom said at the time. My girlfriend purchased her own supplies and has been cleaning the bathroom, the floors, and the kitchen when my parents weren't home. My girlfriend wasn't sure where we kept our laundry supplies, so I decided to help and do the laundry. Usually my mom just does everything. Last week when my mom saw me doing the laundry, she got angry and stopped me. She told me not to do it and tell my girlfriend to do it instead. My mom complained that my girlfriend never cleans the house. My mom even said that it was a woman's job to do all the chores and doesn't want me to do any. And obviously I got annoyed when I heard that. My girlfriend ended up overhearing a bit of this, and I told her what my mom said. My girlfriend was upset that she is expected to clean my house when I'm not. She told me that she's upset that I'm not expected to clean at her house or at my house, but she is at mine. As a side note, her family wouldn't allow a guest to clean anyways. It simply is not good manners. She thinks that this is unfair and that this is all because of her gender, and she doesn't want this to be the norm. Yesterday, I asked my girlfriend to visit, but she didn't want to visit me because she feels she is expected to clean a second home when she works full-time and a lot of overtime. I told her that I don't expect her to clean my parents' house. She pointed out that she already does clean, but I told her that I never asked her to do any of this. Now my girlfriend is more upset with me. I honestly really enjoy when my girlfriend visits me at home, but now I'm kind of at a loss and I simply don't know what to do. It really sounds like your mom in this situation is being super toxic. Like, why on earth would she expect your girlfriend to clean your house? How is she possibly expected to do that? And your girlfriend is 100% correct. Her gender absolutely plays a role in this. Your mom is basically saying, oh, because you're a guy, you don't have to clean up after yourself and you don't have to do your laundry or anything like that, which honestly is not the case. That is simply not how the world works, especially with the idea that the woman is supposed to clean up everything. I mean, that's just atrocious. This is not some 1950s garbage, and it's really disgusting that your mom would have these kind of notions that she's seriously trying to force on your girlfriend. So honestly, your girlfriend is right to stay away. That is until you have some kind of conversation with your mom about respecting your girlfriend. I mean, she is a guest in your house. Does she really expect her to clean up the whole house instead of you pitching in like you try to do and try and do your laundry or clean up the kitchen? I mean, seriously, what an outdated irritated mentality. So maybe having some kind of conversation with your mom and saying, hey, I really don't like you talking to my girlfriend like that, or forcing her to clean up the house instead of allowing me to do it. And in that same vein of thought, maybe it's time to step up and start doing it yourself. Show to your mom that yes, I can take care of myself as an adult, and I don't need you to do everything for me. So hopefully that conversation goes well, because the way your mom is treating your girlfriend is really inappropriate, and her behavior is simply unacceptable. An entitled worker refuses me access to their gym, claiming that I was sick after I stepped outside just to cool down. But in reality, I had been working out at the gym for an hour before he showed up, and all of my stuff was in the locker. But despite my protests, he would not allow me to get my stuff, and instead demanded that I leave. Here's what happened. Since the New Year swarm is still all up in my gym at the moment, I've been getting up very early and going in at around 4:30 in the morning. I can deal with needing toothpicks to keep my eyes open if it means I don't need to queue up for a bench. Something that's relevant to the story, my gym is part of a chain, and a separate location wound up getting into some serious trouble because a bunch of people going there all caught the plague. Corporate came down with a decree for all locations. Scan the membership, check the temperature on your forehead before being allowed entry. So I show up at 4:30 in the morning, stow my stuff away, and do the first half of my workout. I'm doing some cardio along with some strength training. I don't know if this is the case with everybody, but after 45 minutes of kicking my own butt, I'm feeling a little bit warmer than I usually am, while also typically craving some sweet nicotine. Vaping indoors is frowned upon, and it's bloody cold outside, what with it being January in New England. So this is a two birds with one stone kind of situation. I grab my vape and my phone, and I walk around outside for a little bit without a coat. I wind up chilling out real quick and decide I don't need much more nicotine. So I scurry inside, and there's a new face behind the desk, a younger looking dude I've never seen before in my life. I show him the vape, and I explain that I was just getting some air, and he says I still need to scan your card and check your temperature. Well, no point in crabbing at the kid over corporate policy, so I let him scan my card, and then he uses the thermometer and says that I am not allowed to enter the gym because apparently I'm running a fever. I look at him and I say, dude, you really think I just worked up a sweat somehow in the freezing cold and didn't show up with a gym bag, never mind a jacket in this weather? But he looks at me and he says, I don't make the policy, sir. I just enforce it. I'm gonna need you to leave. So I look at him and I say, okay, sure. Can I grab my stuff from my locker? I guess I'll just shower at home. And before I could continue explaining where my stuff was, this guy chimes in and says, sir, you need to vacate the premises immediately. You are at risk of infecting other people. I look at him and I say, there's a difference between overheated and feverish. I didn't have a fever when I came in an hour ago, so I did a bunch of stuff that made me sweat. Pretty sure that'll increase my body temperature. How about you call your manager over or have someone grab my stuff from the locker? But this guy simply wasn't getting it, as he looked at me and said, sir, you need to leave the building immediately. You are risking infecting other people. So I responded, yeah, you can repeat yourself as many times as you'd like, but I'm not going home without my stuff. Now, would you like to call a manager over, or should I call the police and have them explain this to you? It was at this point that he put a finger to his earpiece and summoned building security. Right around the time the woman who let me in the first time came out of the bathroom with a look on her face that said, what is actually going on? She gives me a dazzling customer service smile, looks at me and says, what seems to be the problem? We start talking at the same time, with this guy claiming that I'm infected and need to leave, while I'm also saying that I just want to get my stuff and leave. She cuts us both off and points at me. She says, you go first. I look at her and I say, the guy scanned my card and says I can't get my stuff because my temperature is too high. She gives me a curious look. She said, your temperature was fine when you came in earlier today. What happened? Oh, that's right. You stepped out, didn't you? Thankfully, she recognized who I was in the gym. So I responded by saying, yes, that's me. I guess I just didn't cool down long enough. She waved me through and said that I'm all set just as the large security dude was coming down the stairs to presumably eject me from the building. I didn't hear what went on between the dude who tried to give me the boot and her, but I do know the security guy took over the desk so they could have a discussion in private. After I took a swim and a shower, I thanked her for letting me back in, and she apologized on the guy's behalf. Apparently, she had to run to the bathroom real quick and grabbed a locker room attendant to cover the front desk for her. He was the only male attendant in so early, and she couldn't leave the desk, and he didn't think there was anyone else who would open the lockers without knowing the code. So he felt entitled to just make me leave without my stuff because he didn't know what else to do. to and knew the manager wasn't available. But thankfully, she was there to save the day because I honestly don't know what I would have done if I had to leave without my property. That front desk attendant was completely out of line. I mean, talk about not knowing what you're doing or just not knowing in general how to approach anybody in public. Like, this guy clearly was working out and he was clearly coming back in from the outside. I mean, his stuff was in the locker and this guy was acting like he was breaking the law, calling security as if this guy is some kind of disturbance. So hopefully this employee got put in their place because that is some awful customer service and there's no reason for him to act like that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. A group of entitled customers don't pay their full bill and leave before I get the chance to collect their check, taking with them both copies of the receipt and completely stiffing me out of a $120 bill. Here's what happened. So I work at a semi-high-end restaurant where the average bill for 2 people is about $80 to $100 pre-tip depending on what they order. Tonight, these 3 girls got sat in my section. They were young, like very early 20s, which can sometimes be a red flag at our restaurant as we get a lot of teenagers and very young people who will order water and the cheapest menu items and then tip like $2. Or they order a bunch of stuff and then are shocked at the total price and then don't have any money for a tip. I'm not judging or anything, and definitely not saying that all young customers are like this, as I am young myself, but it does happen fairly often. Regardless, I gave them great service, as I always try my best to do so. I even made a cute little ice cream dessert with whipped cream and candles for one of the girls because they said it was her birthday. They ended up ordering a decent amount, 2 appetizers and 3 of our cheaper entrees, and at the end of it, their bill was about $120. They asked for 1 check, so I brought it out to them. One of the girls handed me some cash as well as a credit card. She said to me, "Here's $80 for part of the bill, and then please put the rest on the card." So I go up and I start counting the cash, and I realize that it's $65, not $80. I counted a couple more times to check, and yep, it really is $65. I return to the table to let them know. They gave me a weird look. Then one of them says, "Oh, we must have counted it wrong. Well, I guess it's $65 then." So I apply the $65 to their bill, swipe the card for the rest, then bring them their receipt and tell them thank you and good night. They left about 10 minutes later. I didn't actually see them get up and leave because I was taking care of another table. Well, as you can probably guess, it turns out that when they left, they not only took the merchant copy of the receipt, they also took the check presenter book with them. At first, I thought maybe another server or a busser had accidentally grabbed it, but I asked everyone and we searched everywhere, including the trash cans, but to no avail, we couldn't find it. The only explanation was that they took the merchant copy and check presenter. They didn't leave any cash on the table either, so I was completely stiffed on a $120 bill. If they didn't have enough money to tip, I would understand. I just don't understand why they felt the need to take the entire check presenter. Part of me is worried that they thought I stole the $15 difference from the supposed $80 in cash and somehow lied about it only being $65, and that's why they didn't tip me. And now I really just hope they don't think that of me, because I would never do something like that, and I honestly just want to do a good job. This is the first time this has ever happened to me, where they've taken the merchant copy with them to avoid leaving a tip. However, something like this happened to one of my coworkers on a $300 check a couple of weeks ago, and he was incredibly upset. But either way, this is such a weird situation, and I wish I was able to catch them before they walked out the door. That really is weird in my opinion. Like, if you're gonna go out to a restaurant and you're gonna eat all this food and have all this service sent your way, the least you can do is not only be ready to pay for what you order, but also be ready to give a tip. Some of these restaurant workers literally don't make that much money at all, so they really rely on tips just to try and make ends meet in their life, and it really does make a difference. And I bet they were probably hoping that you didn't count out the cash and realize that they were giving you $65 instead of $80. That's like the only reason I can think of that they would take everything with them and basically avoid paying you anything. So hopefully those people never come back to your restaurant ever again, because what they did is so dishonest, and it's simply irresponsible and so disrespectful to order so much food and then get out of there before paying your bill. I broke up with my boyfriend yesterday after he crossed my boundaries and continued to talk to his ex-girlfriend. But now I feel like I made a massive mistake, and I feel horrible for breaking up with him, and now I don't know what to do. So a few years ago, I met my boyfriend on Tinder by the name of John. That's not his real name. It was my first time dating someone from Tinder or even meeting someone online. We immediately hit it off and quickly discovered that we had a lot of interests in common. We both had come out of a very long relationship with our other ex, and both had a lot of baggage as a result of it. On my end, I was engaged to someone, and we ended things due to my ex cheating on me multiple times, as well as lying about it. For him, they broke it off because he realized that they weren't compatible, and he was essentially settling for someone that he had no chemistry with. He had admitted that he cheated on his ex during this time and regrets it immensely. We are both pet owners and have niche careers that involve on his end some last-minute travel. I'm lucky that I live with my parents and they're able to watch my cats for me. I used to have a puppy with my ex, but when we broke up, he took the dog and I never saw him again. John, on the other hand, lives alone with his dog, and the rest of his family lives about 16 hours away from me in Canada. It's hard for John to get help watching his dog if he has to travel. At the beginning of our relationship, he discussed with me the arrangement that we had with his ex-girlfriend. When he got his corgi, his ex-girlfriend by the name of Brittany was extremely involved in raising and taking care of the dog. And after they broke up, they agreed that she could babysit the dog a few times a month. And when John travels, since Brittany misses the dog and was essentially the dog's second owner for 3 years, he would allow her to come and see that dog. He also felt that it was cruel to deny Brittany the ability to see a dog that she had raised since it was just a puppy. When discussing this, I told him that I understand the need for the arrangement since I was not yet comfortable with caring for his dog that early on. But I also made it clear that if we continue to progress forward, that arrangement will need to come to an end at a certain point. As our relationship progressed, I wanted to show that I could be someone he could rely on. So I started asking if I could watch his dog when he went on his weekend exercises for work, or if I could babysit the dog for the day while he worked long shifts. And things were going really well, but he was still letting the ex babysit the dog too. At this point, Brittany would call him and ask if she could have the corgi dropped off, and he would drop everything just to do that. I felt that this was starting to cross boundaries on his end and that Brittany was taking advantage of him. I also suspected that she still had feelings for John. With my history of being cheated on multiple times in a lot of horrible ways, I began to feel threatened and jealous. I didn't like the person I was when the conversation of her popped up. When I began to feel uncomfortable about the arrangement, I told him that time is starting to come where I can't move forward more with her still involved. When discussing, we made a plan that he would phase her out over the course of 3 months and tell her that he's been seeing someone. He also started pushing back a bit when this came up. He kept saying he thought that this was cruel and would tell me how devastated he would be if the situation were opposite. My counter argument every time was that for one, it's a dog. The dog will get over it and will be fine. It's not a child. And while it is nice that you're choosing to do this for her, unfortunately, by allowing her access to the dog, you're keeping a door open for her. Also, Brittany is a grown woman and has a big girl job where she can adopt her own dog. Eventually, she will also get over this situation. But most of all, it makes me uncomfortable. If this arrangement is that important to him, I understand, but I'm walking out. I don't want to be constantly fighting for attention or trying to figure out who gets to babysit the dog with an ex of 6 years. Finally, in September, he told me that he cut her off. We continued to progress and fall even more for each other. Life was amazing, and we even began talking about moving in with each other. On Friday night, I went to his apartment after work to pick up his dog while he's away for the weekend. I borrowed his laptop to look at something on my Gmail and ended up finding a picture he took of him and his ex hiking together the day before on Google Photos. I was heartbroken. I was convinced I was cheated on and that this was the beginning spiral of it. When I confronted him, he told me that he just couldn't bring himself to do it when the time came to cut her off. He felt that he had hurt Brittany so badly in the past that he was scared to hurt her again. It turns out he had been lying to me for months, and she had been secretly watching the dog this entire time. He explained that it started off with a white lie until it spun out of control, and he didn't know how to get out of the situation without hurting or upsetting either of us. It also turns out she didn't even know that I existed, which I found out when I called her. I broke up with him on the spot. I told him my boundaries. I explained multiple times over multiple months why I was uncomfortable with this. I also stated multiple times that I cannot be in a relationship with this dynamic and would break up if we don't take this step. He still chose to not cut her off. I feel betrayed and like I can't trust him anymore. When breaking up, he kept saying that he didn't realize I was this serious and he thought that we would work through it when it finally came out, or he would have gotten the guts to cut her off by then. His apologies are sincere, and it is evident that he is distraught over the realization of how badly this has affected our relationship. It's now been a few days and I feel horrible. I've lost my best friend and all I can think about is calling him to apologize and get back together. I miss him so much. I'm worried I overreacted and maybe this is too harsh, but I also stated my boundary and he disrespected it over multiple months while lying to me in the process. A big part of the reason I chose to break up with him is because I cannot see a way to move forward. I don't know how to rebuild the trust in our relationship. Every other aspect of our relationship is phenomenal, and I truly thought he was the person I'd be with forever. I'm so sad. I feel that I made a mistake and should have worked through this instead of just cutting him off. So I'm now at a loss and I truly don't know what to do. I can kind of understand where the original poster is coming from, but it really does seem like he was straight up cheating on you. Like, why would he take some kind of selfie picture with this lady if he's already in a relationship with you and he had already supposedly cut this lady off? It's also mighty convenient that he lives about 16 hours away, so it really does seem like he was trying to live some kind of double life, keeping Brittany around to take care of his dog while also having you to be the loving girlfriend who was clearly just a side girlfriend for him to pick up whenever he felt like it. That is so disrespectful to you, and just like you said, this violated all of your boundaries, so I completely understand why you broke up with him. I wouldn't feel bad about this. His true colors came through, and you saw him for the liar that he really is. And to top it all off, this Brittany lady, she didn't even know that you existed. There's a good chance that she thought she was gonna probably get back together with John. I mean, it's pretty suspicious now that you have the full story as to why she would go on a hike with their dog with just the two of them, because I'm betting if she knew that you were around, she probably would not have been a part of this in the slightest. If anything, you've uncovered that John is unfaithful and that he clearly can't be trusted, so I think you got off the hook in a major way. Just imagine if you got married to this guy and this Brittany lady was still around. John was incredibly dishonest with you, he was not forthcoming and truthful, and you found out the hard way, and it really sucks. But in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would take this as a clear red flag that you honestly do not want to be with this guy. He can't be trusted, he's going to lie to you, and he clearly was using you as some kind of side chick. And no matter how you feel, I truly think you deserve a lot better than that. My dad makes my life hard ever since I started talking to my mom again, who kicked me out several years ago, and everything is such a big mess at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. So for a bit of context, both of my parents were not very good parents to me. I'm an 18-year-old female, and my mom was a mom who would really be very controlling, especially when it came to what I ate and what I chose to wear, as well as how I did my hair growing up. She would yell a lot and was overall just incredibly stressful to be around. She kicked me out when I was nearing the age of 15, saying that she had had enough. Meanwhile, she also did this to my two other siblings. I went to stay at my dad's, and my dad and I saw each other once a week before this, but we weren't really close. He doesn't speak to me, and I don't speak to him. It's that type of thing. I spoke to my stepmom a lot, but then I saw that she had sent a text message to her friend saying how annoying I was, so that relationship soured almost immediately. My stepmom isn't from my country, so when COVID laws lifted, she went back to her country for 2 weeks at a time, coming back for 1 week. I'm nearing the end of 16 at this point, and in those 2 weeks that she was away, my dad told me it was my job to keep the house tidy, especially as he worked. I told him that I go to college every day. I get up earlier than him, and I get home a lot later than he does. I don't want to be cleaning the whole house by myself. But with no surprise, he didn't really listen to me. Keep in mind, by the way, that my dad did nothing for me. For my 17th birthday, he went with my stepmom to his favorite restaurant, a steakhouse, even though I'm a vegetarian. What I'm trying to get across is that he just doesn't really think about me, and I just accepted that I didn't really have a relationship with him, and we were really more like roommates. Each morning, I'd be given a list of things to do, from mopping to cleaning his bedroom, to changing his bed sheets and cleaning the kitchen, stuff like that. I found this incredibly stressful, because if I didn't have it all done in 2 hours, he would start shouting at me. Now, I don't take well to being shouted at, and I tend to close off pretty quickly if someone does that. Days out with my friends ended up being us cleaning the house together, because if it wasn't clean when he came home, he would start yelling again. I tried to bring this stress up to my grandparents and my stepmom, but they did nothing in the house, and they left it all to me, including cooking my own food. He gave me no spending money at all, and if I took any, he would count it beforehand. We did not have a father-daughter relationship before this, and I didn't take to him parenting me. He was honestly just a stranger, and I felt like I was a live-in maid, quite literally at that. This went on for about a year, until I literally couldn't take the stress of missing my mom. Also, my college work was becoming too much, and keeping the house tidy all by myself was just just starting to weigh on me. I dropped out of college because I was falling so far behind. I decided to get a job in this time because I didn't want to be doing nothing for 4 to 5 months at a time. So I started working about 30 hours a week. The following year came along and I needed about $400 to enroll into college. I'm not close with my dad, as I said, so I asked my stepmom if she might be able to ask him about it. And this was in July and she never got back to me. For some more context, in May, I started to speak with my mother again. We had not spoken at all in 2 years. My dad disliked the fact that I was speaking to her again. In August, I wouldn't go to her house, but then we ended up having a big heart-to-heart in the car where we got it all out and I ended up sleeping at her house. So I slept at her house for a few nights in a row, maybe a week. I sent a text message of where I was, but then I decided they knew where I was, and there wasn't much point in texting every night. I see now that this annoyed them. At the time, it was innocent, but when September came around and college started back up, my dad decided at this point he would not be paying for my bus pass. I'd been sleeping at my mom's house, so now I just lived at hers. I didn't feel right asking my mom, a few months into meeting her again, for $400. My dad said he'd only pay for half of it as he considered himself to be split custody now. My stepmom said that she'd never stick for that and that she would give the money back if she were me. So I did, and I ended up paying for the bus pass from my money I saved up from work. I feel I can't really forgive my dad for this. I called him nasty names, the worst of them being that I called him a part-time dad. Eventually, I stopped speaking to him when we had a huge argument over all of this, and I basically screamed the house down, saying how bad of a dad he really was. I left him a letter with my feelings, which he replied back saying that it was a total joke. This whole situation is messy, and I honestly don't know what to do. I really think, based on what you've described, your parents are objectively terrible parents. There's no other way to put it. They seriously have not taken care of you growing up, and they've left you to basically jump back and forth between the two of them, trying to find some kind of footing so that you can grow up and move on with your life, which honestly is exactly what you need to do. And I don't say that to be condescending. It just seems like your parents are not going to support you, and I think you need to understand that moving forward. There will always be some kind of excuse that will prevent them from giving you some kind of aid, whether calling you a total joke or just refusing to pay for anything from you. But even if they do, you can bet that there's always going to be some passive-aggressive response, as they only pay for half of something they easily could pay for in full. So let this be the motivation you need to work towards living on your own and finding your own place to live in. You will probably see so much of a difference in your life when you are the one who's paying for the stuff in your life, because it really sounds like your parents failed you, but at least with some hard work, you can pick up where they clearly dropped the ball. An entitled racist Karen makes some outlandish statements after she calls our call center just trying to cause some havoc, but the management team was not having it, as this entitled Karen was put in her place in a beautiful fashion. And after that, she never called our office ever again. Here's what happened. So almost 20 years ago, I worked the 1-800 support hotline for my country's government financial aid for college applications. It gave me lots of memories of Karens and their outrageous claims, as well as their crazy demands. But the lady in this story that I'm going to share was the boss of all Karens. So literally anyone could call this number, but we could terminate the call if they got aggressive or combative, or were obviously not calling in good faith unless they had an application on file for the current year, in which case we had to listen to whatever they said the whole time. We could escalate the call to a supervisor only if they started making explicit comments that would be considered an aggressive move. But the entitled boss Karen of this story, she came prepared. I found out later that she had filed an application every year, despite having no children or intentions of attending college herself at the age of 68. As she put it to me, she is a taxpayer and therefore pays my salary, and therefore she is entitled to take up as much of our time as she well pleases. But before I go any further, I just want to say that this lady really was awful. She made some awful comments and generalization based on groups of people, and it really was a terrible experience overall. So it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and my supervisor gave me a heads up that more crazy people call on this day because we're the only government line that's actually open. I'm an hour or two into the morning, and the call beeps through into my headset. So I start out with my normal greeting. I say to them, "Thank you for calling, my name is such and such. To get started, I'll need your social security number so we can pull up your application." And yes, asking for this in the opener did cause us a lot of grief, but the script is the script. This entitled Karen snarls out her numbers with the kind of enunciation that we all become familiar familiar with from YouTube videos of rabid boomer Karens confronting minimum wage employees over mask requirements. So it's not like I don't know the call was going to be a nightmare, but I was young and I was so naive, and I truly had no idea what I was getting into with this entitled Karen. I pull up her file, and at the same time that I asked her what we can do for her today, I see that the file iteration number is at 99. That's the top limit, meaning that she has called about that year's application at least 99 times in the last month alone. She answers by saying, "What you can help me with is what I demand to know. Why is it that I can't cash my check today, all because some stupid uppity got himself shot?" Now, when she said this, I just sat there stunned, with a slight stammer, and my supervisor must have seen my face because she comes over, glances at my screen, and says, "Oh yeah, I was hoping I would get this lady today. Send her to me." I say in my best bright and helpful customer service voice, "Ma'am, that is a very good question, and that deserves to be addressed by someone higher up than me. Would you mind if I send you over to my boss?" You can hear her over the phone as she huffs and puffs, stating that yes, I can transfer her, but that I'd better not put her on hold forever. So I hit the transfer button with glee, and I logged my break code to go watch the show go down. My supervisor, as well as every other supervisor on contract, aside from one other white woman who was gone that day, was a college-educated black woman who tolerated no BS. So it didn't take long until this entitled Karen demands to speak with her boss. My supervisor says very sweetly, "Would you like to speak directly with the executive in charge of this entire call center?" And of course, the entitled Karen can't resist that sort of bait. Our executive director, of course, spoke fluent corporate, and his English was flawless. Usually, he retained only a hint of his African accent, but for special occasions, he would dial it all the way up. I would have given anything to listen in on that conversation, but all I got to hear was a bunch of laughter, and there was a lot of that, and it started well before the call ended. While I never did have to deal with that Karen again, when she quit calling us, she switched over to the Medicare line, and they already had enough to deal with. But I like to think the shock and outrage knocked a few years off of her useless, miserable life, and honestly, I'm so glad that my manager put her in her place. What an absolute serious piece of garbage. Like, this lady is just straight up racist. There's no other way of putting it. The fact that she would say that on the specific day that this incident took place is more than enough proof of this lady's ignorance. I mean, there is no good excuse to act that way, and this lady seriously should be ashamed of herself. So good for management for putting her in her place, because this type of behavior is absolutely atrocious, and there is no excuse in the book that would ever excuse this entitled Karen's actions. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My boyfriend has cheated on me in the past, and now I'm having trouble getting over it, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I moved in together after 9 months. It's now coming up to a year of us being together, and for some background, I was previously married and split with my husband before we got together, but have had boyfriends in the past. My boyfriend, on the other hand, has only had one girlfriend who was a bit older, and they were only together for about 6 months in 2021. Around 6 months into our relationship, I went on his phone while he was showering and saw he still had Tinder downloaded. I looked and I saw that he didn't have any messages, but was worried that he had cheated on me. So I decided I would bait him and made a fake Tinder profile. That night, he matched with me and messaged implying that he would like to hook up and started planning a day. After about 10 minutes, the messages stopped, and when I confronted him, he said he wasn't thinking with his brain, and when he snapped out of it, he stopped. He apologized profusely, and we talked about what he could do to earn my trust back, which included outlining what cheating was, and that included exchanging pictures or chatting with someone else. He also reassured me that it wasn't my fault and that he was an idiot, and I finally began trusting him again when we moved in together. The day after I moved in, I was being snoopy again, and I looked on his phone. I found kick messages where he was doing very inappropriate things, as well as interacting with people in a way that was incredibly uncomfortable and quite disgusting, and it makes me very uncomfortable. In some of the messages, he also exchanged pictures and videos, which really hurt, as we had set this as a no-go boundary. So when I talked about it, I was so sad that he decided the rules on what cheating was. He was very sorry again and said that it wouldn't happen again. Now, it happened a few times the week before, but it seriously did not get to him. I asked if he felt guilty, and he said that he felt guilty that I was hurt, but not guilty about doing it, because he didn't intend on actually cheating on me. Recently, he was on his phone and I was next to him, and I saw his browser history, and just to keep things family friendly, it was basically scandalous sites that also allowed you to hook up with other people. Now this was playing on my mind, so a few days later, I asked him to log in so I could check, and there were no messages in his inbox. But I'm still not convinced that he hadn't been deleting stuff, as he's been doing that since I caught him last time. I start therapy next week, and I'm hoping that will help. I don't know whether the feelings of not being enough and the lack of trust and paranoia will ever go away, or if I should just break up with him. I have trust issues anyways, and nothing in my life has ever crushed me like this before. Plus, I'm well aware he's a good liar, and he's good at hiding things, so that makes it worse. I just feel absolutely devastated and broken. I also feel bad for not getting over it, even though it's been a few months, but I'm still so hurt. Other than this, he is my absolute hero. He always puts me first, and he cares for me so much. It's the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. What boundaries can I set, and what conversations can we have to help me get over this? What should I do? I hate to say it, but this is not a healthy relationship. I mean, he has cheated on you twice. There's nothing healthy about this in the slightest, and it really does sound like you are in denial, because I hope you realize that this guy is basically shopping around online and getting with other people. There were also some pretty disturbing things that happened in this story that I left out on purpose for obvious reasons, but needless to say, this guy is not being faithful to his girlfriend, and I seriously think the original poster needs to wake up and see what's actually happening. No amount of therapy is going to stop what he is actively doing to you, and the sooner you realize that, the better off you will be. You do not deserve this kind of relationship, because from what you've described, your boyfriend is not faithful. So hopefully you can figure this out, because his attitude and his actions are incredibly disgusting, and you truly deserve much more than that. My coworker pushes aside a table ready to be seen at the restaurant that I work at, claiming that she can simply take the next one, as she takes her time to put on her makeup in the morning in the bathroom. But she doesn't realize what she's done, as I serve one of the richest members of our community, and as a result earn a fantastic tip that left everybody jealous. Here's what happened. So a couple of years ago, I was waiting tables at this restaurant in New Jersey. This story took place during our slow season, and it was pretty competitive between all the servers. Every server wanted the better section and the bigger tables, since overall, tips were lower than usual. We didn't pull our tips, and things got pretty cutthroat at times. I was doing okay financially, so I wasn't as money hungry as everyone else. I personally get anxiety, so I hate being late to things. So if my shift starts at 5, I'm walking into work at 4:45, just so I can get settled, and then clocking in at 5 o'clock to get to work. But my coworker Kayla, however, had a different attitude. She would walk into work at 5 o'clock on the dot, and clock in and then head right to the bathroom to put on her makeup, which took her about 15 minutes. On most days, it was slow enough that it wasn't an issue, but it still wasn't right. Call me old-fashioned, but when your shift starts at 5, you should start working at 5 o'clock and not apply makeup while on the clock while you have other duties to take care of. I've never had to deal with putting on makeup, but it just seemed to me that she should have taken more time while getting ready to come to work to put it on. I always let it slide because I'm non-confrontational, but it bothered other coworkers. However, management never got around to addressing it. One day, I walked in at my usual time, and as I clocked in at 5, I saw Kayla clock in as well and scurry off to the bathroom. I roll my eyes and I walk to the host station, where there are 2 people waiting to be seated. The host asked if Kayla was here yet because she was up for her first table in the rotation. I told her she was getting ready in the bathroom. The host rolled her eyes and went to tell her she was going to get sat. Now, we all knew that she was putting on her makeup, and we weren't going to hassle her if she was on the toilet or something like that. I didn't hear the exact back and forth that they had, but it definitely took longer than I expected. The last thing I heard Kayla say was to just hand off this table and that she will get the next one. She didn't care. So the host sauntered back to me with a big grin plastered against her face. She said to me, "You're up for this table. Do you want to help me set it up?" And at this point, I'm confused. Set it up? It's only 2 people. And that's when she says something that absolutely blows my mind. She says, "Oh no, it's a party of 14. This is Mr. Moneybags' niece and nephew. The rest of the family is on their way." For context, Mr. Moneybags, this is obviously not the real name, was a very wealthy and well-known man in our area. He made his fortunes in landscaping and then moved on to real estate. And believe it or not, he was one of the few affluent people in our area that wasn't super entitled. Me and the host set up the table in record time, just as the rest of the party arrived. Everyone began to sit down as I greeted everyone, and just just as luck would have it, I gave Mr. Moneybags a handshake as I locked eyes with a very dolled up Kayla as she entered the dining room and realized what she had done to herself. The next 2 hours, I waited on my 14 top table as Kayla waited on 2 tops. She actually had a table not tip at all, which is awful and I don't condone, but in this particular situation, I found it kind of fitting. And of course, she kicked herself again when she looked over at my table's check and saw the fat tip I was getting off of my big table. But you know what? That's her loss. And the moral of the story is that you need to get ready for work before work and not right when you show up. This is a fantastic story. I love it when situations like these arise because you know what? This is absolutely Kayla's fault. She could have made so much money off of that table, but instead she was too busy in the back trying to put on her makeup at the last second when in reality, yes, she very easily could have done that at home. She has literally nobody else to blame except for herself. Whereas the original poster saw the opportunity and was there ready to take care of what needed to be done. And that is honestly what it's all about. You strike while the iron's hot and you show up right when you're needed. And who knows, when you do that, you might just get a 14 top table and make a lot of money as a result. So it's really cool that the original poster is a valuable employee. And because of their hard work, they were able to make a fantastic paycheck, all because their coworker Kayla was too lazy to get her makeup done before coming to work. My father is constantly bothering me and is weirdly obsessed with me as an individual, constantly trying to drag me back into his life, despite the fact that I never want anything to do with him ever again. And at this point, I simply don't know what to do. So to start things off, I don't like my dad. I answer his phone calls because he treats his body horrible, and I know one day it will be his last phone call. I wouldn't answer otherwise. I know it's bad, but it's just how I feel. My parents divorced 15 years ago. He convinced me my entire life growing up that my mom was the reason for all of his problems, and that she was an overall horrible person. I believed him and looked up to him a lot. I'm not sure how, but I finally started realizing that he was full of it. I really dislike him for how much he manipulated me when I was young. He knew that I admired him a ton, and he ate it up and absolutely used it to his advantage. He still bashes my mom all the time, saying things like, "I haven't gotten sleep since your mom and I divorced," as well as claiming that he was always in shape, that is until mom left, and even telling me he has dreams about them being back together, like a lot, and it's extremely weird. He's also always been far too interested in my body, noting to me how I've developed into an adult and other highly inappropriate things. My father is not a good person, and he is by all definitions a creep, as well as extremely close-minded based on people's race and gender. He has mostly been single, with a few girlfriends here and there, and based on the way he acts, it's pretty clear why. I stopped staying with my dad at all when I turned 18 years old. He threw constant fits about me not wanting to stay with him at his disgusting house, where I would have to clean up after him and use dish soap just to try and wash my hair. One day, I told him he was just going to have to grow up and get over it. I now live with my mom. I don't like carrying a million things back and forth because I never had anything I needed at my dad's. He left me about 50 text messages and 20 calls that day, all of which I ignored. This wasn't the first time he had done this either. He's been obsessed with me for a long time, treating me like his wife and making his problems my problems since I was very young. I've always felt like I've had to take care of him. Now that I've moved out and gotten married, it's hardly changed. He keeps track of how long it's been since we've seen each other. He would say stuff like, "You know, it's been 2 months since I've seen you, right? When you move back here, I will see you a lot more." It's also constant calls, wanting to talk about nothing for hours. Like I've said, he treats me like I'm his girlfriend or his wife. He's also the biggest drama queen I've ever met. He treats his life like he lives in a movie. It's just the way he thinks and talks. It's very hard to explain, but it makes him unbearable to be around. I don't know what to do about him. I don't want to talk to him or even be around him. My husband hates being around him. Everyone other than his family hates being around him also. He had a heart attack last year, and that's why I've kept up any relationship at all. He doesn't treat himself any better to prevent another one, so it's hard to feel sympathetic. I just know that he's due for another one anytime. In fact, I went on vacation just last week, and a few days before, my dad called saying he's been thinking about going to the ER because he's been having chest pains and having trouble breathing. He has been having these symptoms since around June of last year, and he decided a few days before our vacation that he had known about this for several months, just to finally consider going to the doctor for it. He told me that he didn't want to worry me, and he felt bad getting getting in the way of our vacation. In other words, he was expecting that if he went to the doctor, that we would not go on our vacation and visit him instead. He seriously expected us to cancel our non-refundable vacation that he's known about for a while. He never ended up going to the doctor, so the call was purely to be dramatic and worry me for the entirety of our vacation. What brought me onto this post is that my dad is having some kind of procedure done to figure out why he has trouble breathing, but I can tell you exactly why. It's because he doesn't eat healthy, he doesn't get regular exercise, and he is an alcoholic. He's been telling doctors he doesn't drink or eat bad. He wants me there at this non-life-threatening procedure an hour away from where I live. Allegedly, his much more adult sisters will be there too. He's making me the primary person the doctor asks on what to do with him despite me saying I didn't want to be. And I don't even think that's needed for this type of procedure. I'm tired of doing stuff just to please him, as well as doing stuff just so he won't throw a fit. I don't need to be at this procedure because I'm not his wife. He's just got this creepy attachment to me that I just simply hate. I don't want to be around him ever, and at this point, I simply don't know what to do. So your dad is absolutely awful. I mean, his behavior in this situation is not only disgusting and incredibly inappropriate, it's just downright manipulative. I mean, really look at the facts here. This guy does not need you there so that he can go to the doctor. He's clearly just playing you. He's guilt-tripping you and trying to drag you back into his life, despite the fact that you're married and you've moved on with your own life away from this man. I mean, let's look at the facts for a second. He gaslighted you as a child to convince you that your mom was a terrible person. He's been obsessed with you for years and basically doesn't want to let you go. And now he's using his health against you just to try and guilt trip you into doing what he wants. And that's not fair for you in the slightest. So honestly, I would not put up with this for a second. If I was in your shoes, I would set up some clear boundaries and explain to him that no, you do not want to be in his life and that you are not going to be involved in his medical procedures. Because think about it for a second. He has spent your entire life manipulating you, and he probably enjoyed the admiration that you showed towards him all throughout your childhood. And he is now probably desperately trying to claw that back into his life by using his health against you. And truly, you do not deserve this kind of behavior. You haven't done anything wrong, and you deserve peace and freedom from this absolute narcissist. So hopefully you're able to set some kind of boundaries, or if anything, just drop him off completely, because this man is clearly manipulative, and he is not a kind person, and he seriously, in my opinion, does not have your best interest in mind. A crazy customer tries to rob our store of a 43-inch TV, attempting to walk out the back door in the garden section at the massive store I work at, but I delay him just in time for the police to show up and begin a multi-city chase with this guy as he attempts to run off with this TV in a display of recklessness I have never seen in my life. And in the end, my manager as well as the police department all praise my efforts as a key factor in the way they were able to stop him in the first place. Here's what happened. So I used to work in a big box store with a garden center department that was basically large enough to be its own store, and it more or less ran that way. For short background, I had been there for a few years, and even though I was technically just a sales associate, I basically had done everything in the building at one point or another, short of officially being an assistant manager. Because of this, I was often depended on to keep the department going all by myself, for hours at a time, mind you, which is not how the garden center is supposed to be run. The garden center has its own cash registers, an outdoor part within the large store, a large greenhouse type room that's about the size of a basketball court, which housed those registers, large outdoor furniture sets, grills, lawnmower displays, you get the idea. There's a door by the register with those thief beepers, which leads to a large fenced-in patio outside which housed our flowers. At the fence line was a gate which led into the garden center from the parking lot, with another set of the theft beepers. Per company policy, that fence was the last point I was allowed to try and intervene in a possible theft. Once they passed that fence and stepped into the parking lot, my hands were tied. Multiple employees were needed at all times to run smoothly, between running the register, watering flowers, watching the gate, and stocking and making sales on the floor. When we were short-handed, which was often, thieves used this opportunity to use my department to be the thieves that they really are. And that leads to the story before us. I was left to cover the department on my own for a short time one day. It was a long time ago, but I believe I actually had help with me, but they were on break or something like that, which meant I had about 20 minutes on my own by myself. This meant being the sales associate for the entire area, as well as being the lone cashier. We had to take customers that had merchandise from the entire store, so often so that that there would be consistent customers ringing out, even if the garden section itself had a slow sales day, which basically locked an associate on or near the register. I had a couple of customers in line I was ringing out, and as I was finishing with one nice lady, I noticed a man walking towards the registers with a large TV in a cart. I knew this was obviously not paid for because he was not accompanied by an associate to the parking lot, which was our store policy. I asked the man if he had his receipt, and he ignored me and continued walking as if I hadn't said anything. As I was handing the receipt to the nice lady, I said much louder, almost shouting, "Sir, do you have a receipt for that?" He didn't turn around, but he yelled back at me saying, "It's in my car, I'm going to get it." And he said that without even slowing down his walk. I darted from behind the register out the door to the patio behind him. The theft beepers went off, of course. I got next to him just before he reached the fence, and still playing dumb, asked him for his receipt a third time. And now he added to his story, "I was coming to return the TV, but I left the receipt in my car." I knew this was absolute BS, because there would be no reason for him to walk in the front door, go to customer service, realize he didn't have his receipt, and then walk around the building to go to the garden door, when he would have already been at customer service, right next to the front door. Additionally, he would have been asked to leave the TV at customer service while going to get the receipt. To avoid this entire interaction that we are already having, I placed my hand on the cart and kindly suggested that I could hold the TV in garden for him so he could go get the receipt, but he pulled the cart away and said, "No thanks, I got it," and quickly rolled into the parking lot out of my jurisdiction. This was the first time I had tried to confront a thief myself, and I had done it completely by the book, but I still had anxiety, and my blood pressure was through the roof because of how terrible I am at confrontations. I just stared at him riding the cart into the parking lot for a few seconds, my mind and body shaking both in a haze in anger, frustration, and disbelief. The nice lady I had just finished ringing out, whom I had completely forgotten about even though it had only been about 15 seconds tops, came up next to me and praised me for doing a good job in noticing the man and assured me I did everything I could, and then proceeded into the parking lot behind the man to get his license plate. The man who was behind her in line, who I hadn't taken care of yet, came up as well, said he was an off-duty fireman, and said if he needed to stay behind as a witness, he would. I thanked him, and he proceeded back to the registers in the greenhouse to get him rung out, and so I could call my manager to inform them of the theft. Super conveniently, one of the customer service managers came strolling into the greenhouse. Myself and the fireman informed him of what had literally just happened before he walked through the door, up until we all stopped because we heard screeching of tires, followed by a police siren. Unbeknownst to me, a police officer was in the parking lot and witnessed my entire interaction with the man at the gate, as well as the nice lady getting his license plate. We looked back towards the front, and I saw a bright red Mercedes peeling out from the parking lot, driving back towards us, then along the side driveway of the garden center towards the automotive center at the back of the building, parallel with a side street. Now, most of the stores from my company have a parking lot that is completely paved over, surrounding the entire building, so a car could circle the building if they were lost or whatever. However, ours wasn't like that. Beyond the automotive center was a tall grass bank dead end. The police officer, knowing the Mercedes had just trapped himself, smartly just blocked the entrance at the front a few feet from us, right at the front corner of the garden center fence. Or so we thought. While looking at the cop car, we all heard a loud crash, and turning our heads back towards automotive, saw the taillights of the Mercedes disappearing over the other side of the bank. And this was probably a 10-foot tall hill, and this went onto the main road, marking this as a bona fide Dukes of Hazzard flight, with parts of his front bumper still crushed against the curb that he just topped in the parking lot. The police officer took off through the actual exit, not the fictional one that the Mercedes just made up, and went down the road after him. And as far as I knew, that was the end of it for now. I was very glad, my manager included, that we all saw that, because that was probably the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I don't know many people who would have believed it if I was stuck in my department all by myself. Just then, my coworker came back from his break, and I broke out in laughter because of how he had just barely missed that entire thing. The nice lady comes back in, absolutely furious, because the guy had almost run her over while she was trying to get the license plate. The manager took her and the fireman in for a statement, and I went to my now much needed break. The manager then called for a door greeter to be added for the rest of the shift, so he wasn't left alone while I was on break. I finished my shift, did a little shopping, and while leaving the store, noticed the front end assistant manager talking with a couple of police officers. Between them was a shopping cart with the exact TV in it. My assumption was that they caught caught the guy, and I left work with an amazing story and feeling satisfied overall. But that wasn't all. That assistant manager caught me about a week later and pulled me aside and praised me for how I handled the entire situation. He and the police had gone through every camera and saw everything going on, from his grabbing the TV and electronics, wandering different places through the store to look casual, all the way up to the interaction in the garden center. He told me I did everything right and by the book. He then informed me of what happened after I saw the Dukes of Hazzards right in front of my eyes. The guy that stole the TV led the police on a chase through 2 different cities and eventually ditched the car with the TV still inside at a car dealership. He ran into the dealership and tried to steal a car from them, but was fortunately unsuccessful. Eventually, he fled on foot and disappeared, leaving the car and the TV behind. The point I had seen him talking with the police was after they recovered the TV from that car and returned it, but the man had not been caught. The police decided to leave the car where the man had left it, in the parking lot at the dealership, and set up a sting. That night after he left, he tried to sneak back into the dealership to get the car back out, and as soon as he tried to get in, he was immediately surrounded by police and was arrested. Shockingly enough, if you could call it that, it wasn't his car in the first place. It belonged to an acquaintance of his, who was in jail at the time of the TV incident. So I don't know how many charges the guy got between grand theft auto, theft from the store, damaging property, trying to steal another car, as well as sending police on a high-speed chase across the county, but I'd like to think that me doing the right thing and trying to stop him in general was the catalyst that led to him eventually getting caught, because he would have otherwise left the building quietly and consequence-free. So I really hope this guy's antics was really worth it in the end, because after all, this was all over a TV. What a crazy situation to be stuck in. I mean, seriously, imagine clocking in for work and you're not only the only person in your section trying to handle customers as well as checking people out, but also you're trying to make sure people don't rob the store blind. And this is the scenario you get stuck in by yourself. And I personally think the original poster really did do a good job. They did everything right, they handled that like a pro, and it really didn't seem like they were shaken up in the slightest by the way this guy was acting as he was trying to get out the door. One thing I've learned from customer service is that when someone is being super aggressive with you or something just doesn't seem right, then there's a good chance that they are up to something quite nefarious. And this original poster spotted that immediately. And the thief really wasn't even that good at this in the first place, were they? I mean, what a terrible excuse overall to claim that you left your receipt in the car and so you brought the whole TV out there just to try and retrieve it. Like the original poster's right. I don't know of any store of that size that would allow a TV of that size to just be carted out the door without someone there to accompany them, just to even avoid suspicion in the slightest. And then with all things considered, this guy then Dukes of Hazzards his way over a hill just so he can get away from the police who were clearly on his case from the beginning. I mean, overall, that's a crazy story. And the original poster even goes on to explain that locally this became a big news deal. There was even an article that detailed the chase, but they stated that a lot of the details that they experienced were not involved in the story. They also went on to explain that it wasn't even a super expensive TV to begin with. It was only a 43-inch and it couldn't have been more than $300. So I can't imagine it would be worth the hassle to end up in jail for all the damage that this guy did. So overall, good for the original poster for standing their ground and trying to make a difference for their store. Hopefully this resulted in some kind of raise or some kind of promotion, because clearly not only do you have the experience to get things done in this store, but it's also clear that you can get it done at the end of the day and try to prevent somebody from robbing the store, even if you've got no one to back you up and you have to go about doing it all by yourself. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. An entitled Karen freaks out on me at the hotel that I work at, complaining that her room is too small and effectively canceling her reservation. And once I sold her room to some other customer, she came back in begging to have her room back. But I ended up getting the last laugh, as I was able to get some petty revenge on this rude entitled Karen. Here's what happened. I worked part-time at a hotel while studying. The summer was always a pain in the butt, as the regular low-key business folks were replaced with stressed out families. A lot of the times, the moms would make a stink in the reception area. Our rooms are small, but can fit 6 people maximum, but it's really tight and almost crammed. This one time, this mother, the mother of all Karens, came with her family of 5, and she was angry from the moment she walked into the reception. When she finally got her turn to check in, she was annoyed and irritated, even though I did my best to welcome them and greet them friendly. They got their key and they went up to their room. Not even 10 minutes later, she came back and skipped ahead of all the other people in line to complain about their room, which she said was way too small for 5 people, even though it has 5 beds, mind you. Her entire family came down. She yelled at me for about 5 minutes, even after I politely explained to her that there were no other rooms. Finally, I caved and I said, look, we're not supposed to do this, but if you want, I can give you the money for the rooms in cash and you can find another hotel room. Finally, a smile from this entitled Karen. I refunded her with the cash from the register and she went on their way. They had not used anything in the room, so I marked the room down as available. 10 minutes later, another family reserved the room, and about 30 minutes after this Karen left, they came back. She was even more stressed out. She said, there are no hotel rooms available in the entire town. We have no choice but to take your room. I looked at her and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I just sold your room to somebody else, but I would be happy to find you another hotel room in a neighboring city about 40 to 45 minutes away. Now, when I said this, as you can probably imagine, this really set her off. She screamed at me, we are going to the zoo. Driving 45 minutes each way is going to ruin our entire day. I looked at her and I said, I know, you told me, but to be fair, you did have a room here, and it's always like this during the summer. All hotels are booked solid. So you knew this? She said, so angry she was almost spitting. I looked at her and I said, yeah, of course there could be cancellations at some hotels, but it is not likely during the summer. But hey, enjoy the zoo at your new hotel. Eventually, this entitled Karen stomped off, and her husband gave her the angriest look I've ever seen. He looked so angry at her for complaining in the first place, as well as ruining the rooms that they already had simply because they thought it was too small. I love stories like this that give out some amazing Karen karma. I mean, truly, this entitled Karen had it coming. If you're gonna act this obnoxious and start screaming at the front desk simply because you don't like how small your rooms are, then you're the one with the problem. And what was this lady thinking of canceling before having a plan B set up? Like, you have no idea of the status of any of these other hotels that you now basically have to rush to see if there's any kind of openings that you can stay in. I mean, how stupid can you possibly be? Seriously. And to be completely honest, this is such a weird thing to complain about in the first place. Like, you're on vacation to go to the zoo. The hotel is the one place you're not going to be spending that much time in. Like, maybe for sleep and maybe for a little bit of downtime, but I would assume that you're going to be out and about doing other things. Like, just sleep where you're at and just deal with it. So seriously, this is all just some self-induced problems that this entitled Karen literally brought upon herself and her family. Because if she had just dealt with the room that she was given, her family probably could have enjoyed the zoo without having to drive back and forth between cities just for a place to sleep. My relationship is really struggling with my fiancé ever since my sister and her 2 kids moved into our home, and at this point, I don't know what to do. So as the title suggests, I'm very much struggling in my relationship of over 4 years due to my family living with me. My fiancé has become very rude and negative towards them, and I feel stuck in the middle. Essentially, my sister got out of a terrible marriage in August. Prior to her leaving, her husband had been absolutely awful towards her. Her husband was controlling and didn't let her work while she stayed at home with the kids, and she had no money. My fiancé came to me after hearing this and expressed to me that he would be happy to open the door to her and her children because he cares for them like his own family. I made certain that he was sure of this, and he said absolutely. I informed her that my partner and I would welcome them with open arms. And a few weeks later, things got even worse for her and she moved in. There were a lot of emotions, and I know she is very thankful. The kids have been adjusting to their new life, and all things considered, they are great kids, as they have been going through a lot. Well, we are now months in, and my fiancé has become mean and bitter towards all of them. He barely acknowledges their existence and has many derogatory things to say about them. I also want to clarify that initially he did not want her to pay him any kind of money at all to stay with us, but I insisted that she needed to contribute. He has many problems with them. The first issue that he has is that they've been sick almost non-stop since moving in with us, and he has gotten sick from them only one time and has been upset about it ever since, which was understandable because we had just gone on vacation. But people get sick, it happens. Next, he hates how messy they are in the kitchen. We are both clean freaks, but he does not clean nearly as often as my sister and I. My sister cleans up after herself and the kids after every meal, but isn't as attentive as we are. For example, sometimes the counters are sticky or the fridge handles have sticky stuff on them. My fiancé has now stated that he does not want the kids going in the fridge at all, that they shouldn't be allowed in there in the first place. I explained that it's not realistic and it's inappropriate to ban and a child from a fridge, but he doesn't care. He can't just wipe up the mess really quick and get over it. He also never wants the kids to use our bathroom for any reason. Every once in a while, they use it to go to the bathroom before school, just so they don't have to go all the way back downstairs. I do point out the messes to my sister, and she probably feels like she is walking on eggshells around him. She tries to do that, but people see things as clean in different ways. My house is always very clean, but he wants perfection. It is like he expects them to be trained and does not allow them to be humans. He has had issues with all of his roommates about how messy they are too, and I pointed that out to him when we fought the other day. After more arguing, he has not talked to me since Sunday. He has also said so many terrible things about them, which really hurts me a lot, especially because I can't even have a minor negative comment about his family without him getting very upset with me. An example of this was when I asked him to address his mom for making comments about my finances, which were not true in front of other people at that. He was basically implying that he was supporting me completely, and it was embarrassing. He said something to her and she got offended and said that she was only saying it to point out how nice it was of him to not charge me rent while I was in college, despite the fact that he had 2 roommates paying him rent. Then apparently I was the bad guy for a year because I didn't like his mom, even though that wasn't the case. I just feel stuck and very hurt. I don't know why he's turned on them so quickly. My sister has done her very best, and she is going through a lot, and he has so much disdain for them. He started recently saying that this wasn't what I signed up for, which doesn't make sense when he was the one that offered in the first place. I asked him what he was expecting, and he didn't even have a response. He also has stated he doesn't want to do any wedding planning at all until they move out of the house. It almost felt like he said that just to try and hurt me. They have nowhere else to go. What should I do? This is a really sticky situation because I can completely understand where both sides are coming from. On one side of it, this guy absolutely said, yeah, we can take them in, and then basically let them into the house. So there's not many excuses that would really work, in my opinion, to excuse him not being ready for 3 extra people in the house. Like, come on, you had to have known that this was gonna happen. It also begs the question, what's the timeline of them staying there? Like, seriously, if this is that much of a deal breaker, then maybe it's time to start seeing if you can find some place for her to live. It's clearly not working out, and you're seeing a side of this guy that you really did not expect. And sure, you clearly love your fiancé. You want it to work out, and you want him to go back to the guy that you used to love. But it sounds like he's at his wit's end, and he doesn't know what to do about it. But that doesn't excuse the way he has a really terrible attitude, and he's setting these weird standards for your sister as well as these kids. I mean, come on, you had to know that kids were going to be messy going into this. And for a bit of context, the sister that moved in has 2 kids ages 8 and 4. So if anything, I think maybe it's time to have a conversation about what needs to be done and some kind of expectation that everybody can have moving forward, whether that's paying rent or cleaning up after yourself in some kind of way that is more appropriate and more detailed. Either way, with whatever you decide, something has to give, because it sounds like everybody is on edge. And considering the circumstance of your sister, I think you owe it to her as well as everybody in that house to have some kind of game plan moving forward. My entitled mother pretends to support me through my several operations, and she does this just so she can get attention, and it has taken me several years to come to this realization. So for a bit of background, I've been sick for a long time, and I had my first 15 operations when I was 21. I was obviously afraid of my first operation, and I asked my mother to come with me for support. She said no, so I went at it alone. When I woke up, I was scared and in pain. I cried for a while. Eventually, I went on my phone, and I saw my mother and siblings had tagged themselves at the same hospital because my sister had a baby scan. I called my mother and begged her to come and see me, but again, she said no. They were just about to leave the hospital and wanted to get on the bus. I went to the next 11 operations alone, and she never visited me even once, even after I came home. My 13th operation, my older sister drove me. I told her how sad it made me that I never had someone with me, someone there when I woke up. She said that she will be there the entire time. I'd also told her how mother had never supported me or been there ever, even though I asked and begged for the first 5 or so operations. I did eventually give up on asking and now take pride that I did it without her. We went to the hospital and my mom and dad are waiting outside. My dad dropped her off and left. I was so upset that my sister set me up, but she told me how mom had been so upset that she couldn't be there, so I just allowed it against my better judgment. My mom was upset that I didn't invite my dad, but I just said I didn't invite you either. Eventually, we get up into the room and I talk for a while, get ready, and all the other things. Eventually, the nurse comes in to tell me I'm going to be going down next, and that's going to be in about 20 minutes. My mom then looks at my sister and says, "I'm feeling really tired. Can you take me home?" And when she said that, my heart broke. My sister promised that she would be back in time to be there when I woke up. I sat there trying not to cry. I asked if they could just wait until I went down, but mom wanted to go home right then and there. So they left, and 10 minutes later, I went down to surgery with a nurse comforting me. Fast forward a few hours, which is a blink of an eye to me, and I wake up and I'm taken back to my room, and lo and behold, I'm still alone. I call my sister, and she says mom wanted to do some shopping, so she will drop her off and bring me a sandwich. And when I heard that, I just cried harder. My mom still tells people that she supported me, but I say that she sabotaged the one time I had support. I've had 2 major surgeries since then, which she once again did not show up for, and didn't care about at all, with the only expectation of trying to claim that she's giving me support. And you know what? It took me years to realize that it was never about supporting me. It was just so she could try and look good in front of others. This is honestly really disgusting behavior. The fact that she wouldn't even show up to just one of these surgeries and sit by your side and wait for you to wake up after your surgery at least once is really toxic. But on top of that, what really takes the cake is the fact that she would then pretend like she's supporting you, just so she can try and look good in front of others or on social media. That, in my opinion, is almost as bad as not showing up in the first place. I mean, she did show up once, but then she's like, "All right, I'm tired, I want to go home." Like, that's not supportive at all. That's you being selfish and stating that you would rather go shopping than be there for your child. Like, it sounds like the original poster has some serious complications in their life, especially if they've had 15 surgeries before the age of 21. Like, that is a lot of surgeries by that age. So clearly the mom has to know at this point, or at least I would hope so, that something serious is going on with their child's health. Wouldn't you think that you would want to be involved and make sure you're there for them in some kind of way, shape, or form? So if I was in the shoes of the original poster, I would probably stop having my mom involved in serious topics of my life. It's obvious that she's just gonna try and use that for some kind of weird clout, and she doesn't actually care about you in the slightest. So truly, I really am sorry that you went through this. This is absolutely toxic, and you definitely did not deserve to get treated that way. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled grandma that lives below us freaks out at any little noise that we make, whether it's walking across the floor or even turning on the AC unit. And her demeanor and attitude is absolutely obnoxious, and it was truly exhausting living above this lady. Here's what happened. So my wife and I bought a condo about 10 years ago. It was a good starter place, and it helped us buy our current house. We moved in while my wife was pregnant with our first child, so naturally I had a lot of work to do when we first moved in. Before we even moved, we painted about half the condo, cleaned the carpets, and replaced 2 sinks, and made some minor repairs. This was a strange condo because most buildings had 2-story units on top and single-story units on the bottom. Overall, this was a nice complex, and the HOA wasn't full of demon spawn. The HOA president was a nice woman who warned us that the insulation between the side units was pretty good, but non-existent between the floors. We had a 2nd-story unit, and the entitled grandma of this story was on the bottom. So at first, the entitled grandma was really nice. She could hear me working on the condo and came up to say hi and bring me some cake because she figured I was working hard. We had a nice talk, and I told her about us having a baby and about us moving in. She told me she had a grandson and how much we like being parents. After the kid was born, she would wave to our daughter, exchange small talk, as well as just do normal neighbor stuff. Well, things changed that summer when we had a heat wave. My daughter was probably 3 months old at the time, and this condo was hot. For context, because of the layout, there were 2 windows upstairs, one in each bedroom, one in the dining room downstairs, and a sliding glass door on the deck. Of course, our daughter's room faced due west and was full on in the sunlight. We had great sun-blocking blinds, but we could not open her window until the sun went down and it was starting to get cooler outside. Because honestly, outside of her room would be an oven. Even when we did this, it was 85 degrees on a regular basis. Our HOA allowed portable AC units with hoses to the window, but not window AC units that hang out the window. I was able to petition them to get a window AC for our bedroom because it faced away towards a greenbelt, so it would not be seen. However, they expressly told me no AC units for the front of the building, so this meant the only AC unit we would get is a portable unit for the dining room. Those 2 units with some box fans made the heat tolerable for the most part. However, there was an unintended consequence of the portable unit that made the entitled grandma lose her mind. When I was at work one day, the entitled grandma came knocking on the door, and my wife was the person to answer it. She said that the AC unit was making a lot of noise and keeping her grandson awake. This was at the early evening, and her grandson apparently couldn't sleep because of the noise. Now, bear in mind, this was a high-end, brand new AC unit. It wasn't loud, and my wife showed it to her. She said it was over 90 degrees in our condo, so we had to keep it on for the baby. And while the baby was drinking milk, you could tell that she was overheated. Our daughter started crying, so my wife excused herself, and the entitled grandma left. About an hour later, this lady came back, this time pounding on the door and yelling for my wife to turn off the AC. My wife was dealing with our daughter and didn't want to answer the door with someone reacting like that. She pounded on the door for 10 minutes before giving up. She came back a little while later and again started pounding on the doors and shouting. My wife called me and I quickly came home to deal with this lady's BS. By the time I got home, it was finally cool enough to turn off the AC and open the windows, and it was maybe 9 o'clock at night at this point. I go straight to the entitled grandma's unit and I knock on the door. She opens it up and she gives me a disturbing stare that basically said, "What do you want?" I ask her, "Why are you pounding on my door and disturbing my wife and baby?" She said that the AC unit was loud and keeping her grandson up. So I say to her, "And this gives you the right to pound on my door and scream at my wife? I had to leave work to come and talk to you because you are so unhinged. I don't care what your problem is. Screaming at my wife isn't how you deal with problems." I then explained how the AC unit didn't make any loud noises, and I'm not sure what she is hearing. I explained the extreme heat issue and how we were managing it, and I gave her my cell number to call me if she had any issues in the future. She was to leave my wife alone and never pound on my door like that ever again. A few days later, we get a call from the HOA, and the president went to check it out. She was trying to remain neutral and told me I had a right to my AC, but that there was a noise. But it seemed like the walls were humming, and with this in mind, the only thing I could figure was the building had terrible construction design, and that the AC was causing a weird vibration that would cause the wood to become harmonic. Again, the AC unit made very little noise and only had a slight vibration from the motor. So I put my MacGyver hat on and I go to the hardware store. I get a foam kitchen mat, some cardboard, and packing tape. I fold over the mat, put several layers of cardboard in between it, and I tape it shut. So I basically made a poor man's vibration isolation pod. I put my AC unit on that, took a picture, and sent it to the entitled grandma, as well as the HOA. I told them we would minimize the AC use, but we had a right to use it, and I have taken steps to mitigate the issue. For a while, this seemed to shut this lady up. However, she stopped saying hello and wouldn't look at me in the eye after that. Over the next few months, we had no real issues until we started hearing tapping sounds on the floor. I figured at first she was hanging something, but nope, she was hitting her ceiling with a broom. Apparently, the noise was unbearable. I mean, we were just walking around the house. No running, jumping, loud music, or stuff dropping on the floor. Just walking. I went downstairs and I talked to her about it and told her we were just walking, and she complained about how loud it was. She even complained to the HOA again, but they figured out it was just the building being a little squeaky in places due to age. Literally nothing we could do about it unless we rip up the floorboards. On Thanksgiving, we had a couple of friends over. Our kids were quietly playing in the living room, and we were sitting at the dining room table just talking. I got up to get something from the kitchen when she started tapping on her ceiling again. I responded with a loud stomp on the floor, which made her stop right in her tracks. She's the one who decided to move into a bottom floor unit of an older building. We weren't loud people, and even though our daughter was a toddler, she was relatively quiet. Our unit was empty for most of the time that she was there before we moved in, so I guess she just got used to the quiet. After this, we barely acknowledged each other until we finally moved out a couple of years later. The woman who bought it from us was a single woman, so hopefully they get along much better than we did. That downstairs neighbor sounds like an absolute nightmare. She's tapping on the ceiling, basically trying to get you to stop moving in the house. Like, what does she expect you to do? Hover everywhere that you want to go? And I'm really glad that the original poster put their foot down and didn't take this lady's garbage for a second, because honestly, that's what you need to do. It doesn't matter who the neighbor is. If they're being belligerent and slamming their fist on your door, it's time to take action and not only protect your family, but also tell them to get lost. There's no excuse for that kind of behavior. And I agree with the original poster. Hopefully the lady that moved in there has a lot better luck than the original poster and their family, because honestly, I think they're gonna need it. But today I messed up by offering to babysit my coworker's kid for free, which eventually led to me driving hours around the city trying to do different things for this lady, and I honestly don't know what to do. So one of my coworkers is super nice and has a 2-year-old son. She's been going through a breakup with a toxic ex who was verbally awful to her, and she lost a lot of her stuff and had to move back in with her mother, who lives an hour away from work. She currently doesn't have a car, so her mother picks her up and drops her off. She signed up for therapy at a place that was only a block away from my house, so I offered to watch her son for an hour for free so that she could go to the session. When the day came, it turned out that she never had a ride to therapy and had no idea how she was going to get there, and I felt bad and under pressure to say that I would drive her there, which also meant staying at work for another hour, waiting for her to clock out with her son. For context, we both work at a daycare, so he was already there. Her son and I drop her off, even though her therapy wasn't for a little while longer, just because I didn't want to have to try and get everyone back in the car again. The kid and I go to my place and we have a blast. Not even 10 minutes later, she calls me asking where I live, because it turns out her therapy wasn't until the next week. She was embarrassed, but I didn't mind, and she just came over. It did just become a little bit awkward, because she just sat on her phone on my couch while her son was running around doing whatever he wanted. After about an hour, I asked her how she was going to be getting home, and she finally tells me that her mom didn't want to drive the whole way over here, which is about an hour just to get her. So she asked if we could meet halfway, and at this point, I just wanted them out of my house, so I said okay. They had me drive to a random gas station 45 minutes away, somewhere I have never been to. The son, who was screaming, had finally fallen asleep, watching my phone in the back, and by this time, it's almost 8 o'clock in the evening. They didn't even meet halfway, but actually very close to her mom's house. We get to the gas station, and she just gets out of the car without even saying thank you, but gave me $10 for gas. I got out to help her with the car seat when her stepdad gets out of their car and says to me, "Same time every 2 weeks?" I was shocked and kind of just stumbled, okay. And once I left, I even got lost on my way home and had to pull out my GPS just to figure out where I was. So it took much longer getting back. I finally got home around 9:30 at night. I wasted 4 hours of my life along with gas to help her out for $10, and she didn't even have therapy. The next day, I made up a story that the car was actually my boyfriend's and that he forbid me from driving it that far. She had to cancel her therapy, and I'm not really sure if she blames me for this or not, but you know what? I don't really care anymore. What an absolutely horrible situation. You're just trying to help out somebody who clearly is down on their luck, but instead they quite literally use you as a taxi to basically drive an hour to another city, all because they didn't have their garbage figured out. I mean, that is simply not fair for you in the slightest. So if I was in your shoes, I would be messaging her back or just telling her straight up, no, I will not be driving you anywhere every 2 weeks. That's not happening. It is quite literally not fair for you to have to be stuck in that kind of situation, and the last thing you need is for her to give you a different car and be like, okay, can you drive this one instead? Because she clearly might not get the picture. I always personally find that it's better to be more straightforward and honest with people, just so they can know exactly where you stand. Because as someone who's had their generosity used against them several times, it is simply not worth having any kind of ambiguity between what is and is not appropriate for your time and effort. So hopefully for your own sanity, this lady doesn't ask you for anything in the future, because clearly she's just going to disrespect your time, and she really will not consider you in the slightest. An entitled Karen freaks out on me when I tell her that she can't cancel her reservation to the hotel that I'm working at, simply because she booked through a third-party site, and they are not nearly as flexible as we are. Here's what happened. So at the hotel that I work at, we have a pool. It's not the biggest or the best pool in the area, but it's something, and it's there for people to use. A few months ago, the pool heater broke, so the pool was ice cold because of the winter temperatures. The owner ordered a new one back in November, within a few days of it not working, but it never arrived. After a few negative reviews about the pool not being heated and the order getting canceled, with a note stating that there's no new heater available until February at the earliest, management decided to close the pool and take the time to do other things to it and make sure the other parts are working properly. Less than a week after we closed the pool for maintenance, I get a call from someone asking the price of the room. I told them the rate, but they didn't like it and said it was cheaper online. I said that if you can find a cheaper rate online, then book it, since I can't honor a rate that you say you found online, but warned them about how those rates have less flexibility and worse cancellation policies in general. They hung hung up without saying anything after that. About a few minutes later, I see a new reservation come up from a third party with the infamous no cancel rate. For those who don't know, the no cancel rate from the third parties is exactly how it sounds. No matter what, you cannot cancel the reservation nor change the dates, regardless of when you booked it. These are some of the cheapest rates you can find, but one of the worst reservations if things change. The bottom line is, don't make reservations with this rate unless you know for a fact that you are going to be there for the dates that you put in. Anyway, about 4 hours later, a woman shows up with her 2 kids, saying she is checking in under that no cancel reservation. I check it and it is registered to 2 adults and 2 children. As I'm starting to get the registration card printed with our hotel terms on it, the woman asks what time the pool closes. I explain that it is closed because of mechanical issues. She gets surprised, telling me that she booked the room so her children can swim, all before she asked to cancel the reservation so they can go somewhere else. And this is where things got really interesting. After I tell her that the reservation was a non-cancel reservation and that she would not be refunded, she starts getting upset. Thankfully, not full Karen mode because her kids were with her. What do you mean you can't cancel? I haven't checked in yet and your pool isn't working. I look at her and I say, I'm sorry. If you book directly through our hotel, then I could cancel it, but I can't without you still being charged. Well, I called a few hours earlier. Why didn't you tell me the pool wasn't open? I wouldn't have booked otherwise. It was a slow night and I only had 1 phone call, so I knew she was the one who just asked for room rates and wanted us to book it for cheaper than online. I told her I was the one who talked to you and you never asked about the pool, just the rate. I'm sorry, but I would have said it was closed if you asked me. Well, either open the pool or I'm leaving. I expect a refund if I leave, and I'm going to leave a bad review. But the truth is, even if I wanted to at that point, I could not open the pool since we drained it the night before. I just said to her again that she is not getting refunded, so she can either stay the night or go somewhere else and still get charged for the night. She left, but not before saying that she'll be calling corporate. Sure enough, less than 10 minutes later, corporate does in fact call up and ask for my side of the story. I tell them that she booked a no cancel reservation after we could not honor a rate that she saw from a third party, and that's why we are not refunding her. They asked about the pool situation, and I told them that it was indeed closed, but the guest didn't even ask about it, so I didn't warn her over the phone because I didn't know she wanted to know that. The person actually laughed, saying if he had $1 for every time he got a call about an issue that wouldn't be one if the guest asked the hotel in advance, he would be so rich that he wouldn't even need to work anymore. I laughed back because I can definitely relate, and I asked if he needed any more information. He stated that he didn't and said he'd tell the guest she isn't getting a refund and that they needed to talk to the third-party site and not our hotel brand's corporate. An hour after we hung up, I got a call from the third party asking about the reservation. Usually, third parties kind of ask in a demanding way that we refund the guest or even ask to refund them, which really is an upsetting experience overall, but this person didn't. He just asked me normally, as if he was required to ask and verify that it was a no cancel on my end. I confirmed and he was like, well, that's what I thought. Thank you so much. And then he hung up the phone. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but if you were trying to book a hotel, book it directly. It's the only way to have flexibility and to cancel if things go south. And especially if you're staying somewhere just because you want your kids to go to the pool, make sure it's open before you book the hotel. Yeah, that's like one of the big risks of going through a third-party site. You just don't know what the stipulations are going to be when you have that hotel in your hand. Sure, you probably got it at a cheaper rate, but that probably means, just like in this story, you can't cancel it. And if you try to, you're just going to end up like the lady in this story. So definitely be careful in that regard, because who knows how much money you might be throwing down the drain if your plans don't actually work out. An entitled customer tries to purposefully break our bowling equipment just so he can get extra time to bowl longer with his family. But in the end, I get the last laugh as I charge this guy for all the free time he thought he was getting out of us. And as a result, he definitely was not happy. Here's what happened. So I had the unique pleasure of working in customer service for over 7 years. My longest job was at a bowling alley in a mid-sized town. It was the high-end bowling alley in the town and thus attracted some pretty entitled people. While I got pretty good at zoning out their dumb requests and simply complying, there were a few times that malicious compliance really was warranted, and this was one of those times. So for some backstory, the bowling alley required people to purchase bowling by time, so typically it'd be like $20 per hour or something like that. When I turned on the lane, the bowlers got a 5-minute buffer period in addition to their time purchased. Most Most of the time, this was not an issue, and people came and left with no issue at all. Upon request, however, people could get an extra 15 minutes for free in case of mechanical issues or large groups that were in the 8th frame or higher, and I bet you can imagine where this goes bad. Now onto the main story. So one day, a family consisting of a dad, 2 daughters, and a mother came in and started a tab with 1 hour. We let them open tabs since we had servers and food service too. The kids were younger, but I had seen this dad in the bowling alley before, as he played in one of our leagues. He was one of those just snobby looking bowling guys with a rolling bowling bag, beat up bowling balls, and a huge belly that seemed to go hand in hand with the pro bowlers that came into this alley. He had scammed a lot of free stuff from us before, and we had actually been warned about him as employees. Fast forward an hour, and his time is almost up when all of a sudden I hear a large crash. It was the sound that a bowling ball makes when it hits the sweep that wipes the pins off the lane. There's a small window of time that a bowler can hit the sweep while it's clearing pins. And of course, the dad I discussed earlier was the one that hit it. He comes bumbling over and tells me the lane is broken, and I could clearly see that the lane was broken because the lane monitor screen had the code for a jammed arm. I apologized and I called for a mechanic. After doing that, he demanded 15 minutes of free time since he had to wait for the mechanic to fix the lane, which took about 2 minutes in general. Since it was his first incident, I gave it to him, and that honestly was my first mistake, because as you can probably guess it, this happened again a second time, right as his time limit was getting low. He came bumbling over once again and did the same routine, and I regrettably gave the second set of time to him for free, and then he went away, and as you may have guessed it, it happened a third time. This time, however, I decided to charge him for the 15 minutes, since I knew what he was up to, and our policy specifically states that we only give 15 minutes for free. On the 4th time, the guy came over again, and I charged him again. This happens a total of 5 times, and I charged him for 3 of them. When he finally decided to pay out, he saw his bill and got furious with me. He came thundering over to me and barked at me, saying that I was wrong and that he needed to see my manager. When my manager came out, he gave his side of the story, which of course was about how I was an idiot and that our lanes break way too easily. I then gave my side and calmly explained that I gave him more free time than our policy had stated, and that due to his continued request for more time, I gave it to him at a cost. My manager then asked to see the tab and look through it. Not only did my manager agree that I was right, but he also made the guy pay for the second set of 15 minutes that I had originally given to him for free. My manager cited our policy and told the man what he needed to pay, and after some intense yelling, the guy cursed us out and vowed to never come back ever again. And wouldn't you believe it, he ended up coming back for league 3 days later. So clearly, he knew what he was doing that day, and he was just mad that he ended up getting caught. What an absolute scumbag, and honestly, this is so unacceptable. I mean, how can you treat someone like this and still get away with it? And when I first read through this, I was actually really surprised that this guy didn't get banned from this place, but the original poster actually has some more details involving that. They go on to explain that a few months later, he was eventually banned from the alley entirely. The guy apparently broke one of the super light balls of his that's about 6 pounds, and he got angry with the manager when they refused to fix it. And in his anger, he threw the ball at the glass doors and broke it. And because of that, he ended up getting arrested and was forced to pay for damages while also earning a restraining order. And that seriously is just not surprising to me. This sounds like one of those guys who's gonna try and work the system and then throw a temper tantrum when he doesn't get his way. So thankfully, there is some justice and karma in the world, because that guy was super obnoxious, and it only was a matter of time before he got banned from this bowling alley completely. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. My entitled mom is in denial, claiming that I'm just gonna do my internship remotely, when in fact I am moving out, and I will be moving to the big city so I can pursue my career. But despite these facts, she still chooses not to get it, and I'm honestly so exhausted trying to explain anything to her. Here's what happened. I'm going to be starting my internship in a few months, and it has been something IT related. I've told my mother about this, saying I'd be in the city looking for jobs because IT jobs are way more abundant in a city. When I first told her, she was a bit skeptical about it. She kept asking me if I'm sure I can't do my internship at home. I told her no, and I have to be working with computers for my internship because I'm there to get industrial experience. After the internship, I would probably stay in the city for more long-term IT jobs. But since then, every time the topic was brought up, she would always act like I'd I'd be interning or working in my hometown instead. She would even prove this point by saying things that implied that I would be working from home instead of working in this city. And I would always correct her, saying it is near impossible to find an IT job in my small hometown away from the city. And just because someone else's daughter was able to find an accounting job there doesn't mean I'm going to have the same opportunities with an IT job, let alone a decent one where I can get some industrial experience. Now, when I told her that, she responded by saying, "Yes, but as long as there's a computer, it's IT." And when she said that, I just did the biggest facepalm. She wants me to work in my previous office job in my hometown as a data entry clerk. The pay was decent, and I was able to give her some of my pay to help with groceries. But I suspect the real reason she liked it when I worked there is because the boss of the company is incredibly rich and gives out free stuff to women and elderly people during special holidays. As an employee of the company, I get to take home a lot of free goodies for my mother, which she was really happy about. I didn't really care about that stuff that much. I just needed the money to go to university. I also got the hint that she doesn't want me to quit that job when I wanted to switch jobs to do something I'm more passionate about. So I'm telling her that I'm not going to graduate with an IT degree and work in the same place before I went to university. I need to find IT jobs in the city. And she kept saying the same thing over and over again, as if she didn't understand what I just said. She just loves to reply with some kind of contrary statement, as if the point that I've just made meant nothing to her. Trying to tell her no was like talking to a broken record, and I just can't get through to her. So I just end up being quiet and letting her rant. And then she's shameless enough to try and ask me if I'm seriously going to be coming back to my hometown to work. And I just said at that point, whatever. I'm not going back to my hometown. Part of the reason why is because living with her drives me absolutely insane. I'm going to do my internship in the city anyways, but I'll be expecting an earful from her from time to time. She will be subtly complaining about the woes of city life and how convenient it would be for me if I were at home living with her, which honestly, I am absolutely not gonna do that. It sounds like your mom is in denial. She clearly does not understand that you are moving up and on with your life. You cannot be expected to live with her for the rest of your life just so she can get free goodies from the job you're currently working. And it sounds like you want to move on from that job anyways. And I don't blame you. You want bigger and better jobs for your future, and this data entry job just simply doesn't cut it for you, which makes sense considering your goals. So I would go for this internship no matter what your mom says. This is going to be such valuable experience, and it will be an opportunity for you to network with people that you very well could work with for the rest of your career. And if she seriously still does not get it, then maybe it's time for you to be more specific with her and set out right in front of her exactly what you're gonna do. Maybe something like, "Mom, I refuse to work at the company I've been working at ever again. Even if you get me fired from every job I ever get, I will not return there. I'm not staying in this hometown, and I am going to the big city. And that's final, no matter what you say." Or maybe something along those lines, because from the sounds of it, your mom is simply not getting it. So hopefully this all goes well for you, because quite literally your whole life is in front of you. And I think you owe it to yourself to move out of your mom's house and move on with your life. My entitled cousin makes outrageous demands about a job that I'm trying to get her at my company. And when I tell her no, she freaks out on me and tries to get me disowned from the entire family. So as a result, I cut her as well as her mother out of my life. Here's what happened. I'm a 36-year-old female, and I've never been very good at keeping most people around. I basically disowned my physically and emotionally awful egg donor at the age of 10. I'm talking about my mother in case you're not catching on. And I did the same with my neglectful father at the age of 14. I have had symptoms of social anxiety disorder since I was about 3 or 4. I just don't really know how to connect with most people. My empathy levels are off the scale. However, this is especially prevalent when I do connect with someone or an animal or wildlife. I know now that some people find my kindness and sincerity to be off-putting. People have been so horrible to me, and I see so much horrible treatment throughout the world that I always give a compliment when one might pop up in my mind, and I work hard to be the queen of gift giving. It is understandable that this can scare some people, since I believe the only true monsters in this world are humans. There are, most likely, a lot of humans that have placated kindness and have been looking to manipulate or to do harm, but I am not like that. I go into overdrive trying to help the people I care about when they tell me they are in a bad situation, or if they just might be unhappy. A few years before COVID, during Thanksgiving, my cousin, who was in their mid-20s at the time, let's call her Tony, that's not her real name, was constantly complaining about how much she hated working as a caregiver. She would talk about how little money she made and how financially strapped she truly was. My family is mostly on the poverty scale. I think I only just barely broke out of that in the last 3 years. And while my husband and I are still not in the best financial situation in the world, it is a lot better than poverty. Anyways, I was working at a credit union at the time, and I offered to put my name down as her referral if she wanted to put her application in. The position was making over $4 more per hour than she was at her current position, and it came with a $500 signing bonus. I also took all honor roll and college credit English courses in high school, so my writing skills are superb. So I regularly offer to help my friends and loved ones with their resumes for free whenever they apply for a job. I offer the same to Tony, as we had discussed her applying to the credit union. I advised that I don't split referral bonuses, but that if she stayed long enough for me to get one, I would be happy to take her out for dinner. The referral bonus would have been $500, the same as the sign-on bonus. She seemed fine with it throughout dinner, and even seemed excited by the prospect of getting a different position. A few nights later, Tony texted me, asking if I would be willing to split a referral bonus with her. I advised her once again that I don't split referral bonuses, because we need the money too much. I also reiterated that I would be happy to take her to dinner if I got a referral bonus from her staying the required 90-day period. I had just started driving when I got her response, and I pulled over to read it, and I was flooded with absolute fury when I read her text that said, "You're just being selfish, just like your mother." Now, my entire family knows about me being mistreated as a child, and as much as I have tried Tony's whole lifetime to be a kind and good role model whenever I was around her, whenever she did not get the response that she was looking for from me, she would then go to use my hatred of my mother to try and hurt me by saying I am just like her and all these other horrible things. I told her then and there to lose my number because I will never be willing to help her with anything ever again. She texted me again, stating that she and her mother would be getting me banned from future Thanksgiving dinners all because of this. I reached out to my aunt, who is Tony's mother, and I told her that I loved her, but I needed to know if she was a part of this ordeal. She told me that she was, stating that I was selfish and claimed that I didn't know how to treat family and that I should just grow up. So I decided to stop letting her walk all over me and treat me like garbage every time her daughter has a temper tantrum. And so I burned down that bridge between us, as I told her that she can get lost. I went to work the next day and informed my boss that I would like my name removed as a referral for Tony, and that I did not want her application associated with me at all. My coworkers and management were astounded when they asked for the story. They stated that we specifically provide a $500 sign-on bonus so that new hires won't ask for the $500 referral bonus. Why does she need the bonus as well? Fast forward to next year Thanksgiving, and my husband and I were fighting to get our car unstuck from the snow. Tony and her boyfriend came out onto my other aunt's porch and just laughed and mocked us the entire time. And my sister was upset when she found out. She said I absolutely should have interrupted her dinner to get her help. Neither my sister nor I speak to either this cousin or aunt anymore. Now, my grandma raised me since I was 14 years old, and my grandma warned me during high school that my aunt was not my friend and that I shouldn't fool myself, presumably because of all the horrible things she said about me behind my back to my grandma. I know my grandma was just trying to protect a broken child from even more harm, and I wish I had been smart enough to listen to her at the time. But yeah, I used to always wonder if anybody could ever love me, since the people who were supposed to love me the most obviously didn't. It took so very long for my husband to break through the persistent thought process of mine and teach me that I didn't have to continue to allow people like my aunt to treat me so badly because I didn't realize I don't deserve to be treated like garbage, especially by somebody who claims to be my family. I am amazingly lucky when it comes to the people I do have in my life. Quality over quantity, I guess. I am not very good at keeping most people around, and I have made plenty of mistakes in my life. But for this story, I stand completely by my behavior. My life is better and less stressful without toxic family members that constantly either treat me badly or make passive-aggressive remarks about how I have lived my life and have disowned my terrible parents. If you have a toxic family that makes you feel bad no matter how nice or good you are, try to remember that you are worthy of better and strive for a different environment. This life has continually showed me that if you are depressed and you wonder if the world would be better without you, trust me, cut the people whose words constantly hurt you, those who believe you are worthless, and change your environment. I know life is not always kind, and that may not always be an option, but definitely try. A content life is so much better than a life where you consistently want to end your existence because toxic people have convinced you that you are worthless. They are wrong. Be kind to that lifelong friend in the mirror. Look your friend in the eyes when you look in the mirror and say kind things in your mind. It has taken a long time, but I will attain self-love, and I recommend it for all. There's some good lessons to be learned there, but most importantly, if someone's treating you like garbage in this way, then seriously, you are not the bad person for cutting them off. I mean, the original poster here is obviously a very kind individual, and they were just trying to help out their cousin, who clearly was in some kind of need. And for them to act like that when they weren't given exactly what they want, even though what they wanted was absolutely ridiculous and not possible, is overall incredibly toxic. And the fact that they would then take this out on the very person who's trying to get them the job in the first place is just proof that they are not a good person in the slightest. And I don't blame the original poster for cutting them out of their life. I mean, seriously, who would want someone like that around who's gonna put you down and try and take advantage of your kindness? That's inappropriate and nobody deserves that. So good for the original poster for trying to preserve their own personal happiness. Because at the end of the day, when all else fails, truly all you do have is that person in the mirror. And just like the original poster said, I really do agree that you need to be kind to that person, especially when everybody else around you decides to put you down. My boyfriend of 7 years is requesting that we take a 1-year-long break so he can figure out what he truly wants out of his life. And I'm honestly so appalled, and I simply don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I have been together since we were about 20 years old, and for the most part, our relationship was pretty good. We can communicate pretty well our wants and needs, so it's been a very healthy relationship overall. A couple of days ago, I noticed that something was bothering him, so I asked him what was going on. He said he doesn't feel as good as he used to. He's not okay with where he is now in his life. He doesn't like his job, his economics, or basically his life in general. The only thing he said is good in his life is me, and that doesn't make him feel fulfilled. We've been talking nonstop this past few days, while also shedding many tears. At the beginning, I was scared because I didn't want the relationship to end, but the more we talked, the more I feel I don't deserve this situation. I know that this is not a me problem, but instead this is a problem with him, his life, and his goals. I can't think for him and I cannot be happy for him. I'm exhausted at the end of every conversation, as he ends up telling me that even though he wants to discover himself, the only thing he is sure of is that he doesn't want to live without me. But then the next morning, he wakes up confused with what he really wants in his life. He's come up with this idea that maybe we could take a 1-year-long break so he can try and find himself and then come back to me. And when I heard this, I was honestly stunned. I honestly think that's awful. And I told him that I love him so much, and probably in a year I will still love him the same, but I don't deserve that. I won't be sitting with my arms folded just waiting, and I will probably resent him a lot, so that won't work for me. If he stays, then he stays, and I will commit to work things out in therapy. But if he does leave with the expectation that he can just have me back in a year, then it's done. Our relationship is over. He said the most important thing for him is my happiness, and I deserve a concrete answer of what his choice will be, but he wants time to think about it and is requesting about a month to think about it. But now I'm asking myself, what do I want? Honestly, him pulling this stunt destroyed what little trust I had in him in the first place. So I don't know if now I should leave or if I should stick around. What should I do? I think this sounds absolutely ridiculous. This guy wants a 1-year break from the relationship and just expects you to sit around and wait for him to get his stuff figured out. What he is asking for is a break, but in reality, he is breaking up with you. He is putting on hold your relationship just so he can figure out who knows what. And that's not fair for you in the slightest. And if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would put up with that, not for a second. So you know what? If he wants to be free, let him free. And that includes him taking a month to figure things out. There's no reason for you to be left in limbo and try and figure out what he wants out of his life. Because clearly, even though he says, oh, your happiness is all that matters to me, his actions and his attitude are saying something different. Like, his logic just doesn't make any sense. His life sucks, so now he's gonna get rid of the one person who makes his life a little bit better? I mean, that's honestly just so counterintuitive, it's not even funny. So hopefully, for the sake of your life and what you want out of this relationship, you put yourself first and figure out what you want with your life. because waiting a month or even a year for him to figure out his is only a waste of time for you and something that I consider, in my opinion, something that's not worth your time and not something that you should wait on. An entitled Karen demands my Spider-Man toy for her child, stating that he needs it so much more than I do, and even going as far as showing up at our house at 2 in the morning, demanding that we hand it over. But my mom sets this lady straight and tells her to get lost. Here's what happened. So this would be a very complicated story if I had to explain all the idiosyncrasies of my family, but I will try to cut things short and simplify it as much as possible. So there's this cousin of mine, and he's an only child of a mom who had him when she thought she couldn't be a mom anymore. So in having that child, she spoiled that boy like crazy. He could always manipulate his mother into doing whatever he wanted, simply by pretending to be sick and saying something along the lines of, "I think I'm gonna be sick." Here are just some of the examples off the top of my head of him being spoiled. For starters, whenever he didn't want to eat, his mother would put his food in the blender and give it to him so he didn't have to chew it. Yeah, absolutely disgusting if you ask me. Also, his mother would cut up his food, like a piece of meat or a sausage or something like this, and has done that all the way up until present day. And at this time, he's still 28 years old. And I'm not talking in the sense of like she is cutting the food for him to show affection here or there. I'm talking in the middle of a barbecue or around a bunch of grown people playing football, or even when he's drinking and eating, he would fix himself a plate, go to his mother, and ask him to cut up the meat for him. This was literally the last interaction I had with him. And we tried talking to him since he was like 15 or so, but that in and of itself was just incredibly weird. Anyway, so in the past when he was about 7 or 8 years old, the Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire was the hot stuff on the town. And my grandfather had a client of his that was the owner of a company that made toys. So he would give me and my brother the catalogs with the toys of the season when he visited us. At the time, we lived in a small town, and he lived in a big city, about 2 to 4 hours away, depending on the traffic. So he and my grandmother would visit us frequently. He requested that we choose a few toys for our birthdays, as well as something for Christmas as well as Easter. So being the superhero fan that I always was, I asked him for the Green Goblin and the Spider-Man action figures. And boy oh boy, they were the two best toys I've ever gotten to this day. They were simply magical. I slept with him by my side, and happily so. And it was even during the time when I was slowly overcoming my fear of sleeping alone. So in the next interaction that my brother and I had with my cousin, we brought the toy out, which was as detailed and realistic as possible. It was works of art, and I honestly loved it. But you know what? So did my cousin, specifically the Spider-Man, which was both of our favorite superheroes. And he played with it all day long, which was no problem for me, as long as I could get it back and have it with me when I sleep. Well, fast forward to 2 in the morning, and according to my mom, my mother receives a call from my cousin's mother. And again, according to my mom, you would think that this kid was on the verge of collapsing, and that the only antidote was the Spider-Man action figure, especially by the tone of her voice and the things that she said. She asked if she could come by, go to my room, and get the toy. And of course, that would wake me up as well as my brother up in the process. But this entitled mother definitely did not care. She also asked if my mother could do her a favor and just deliver it to her house. Now, according to my cousin's mom, he was apparently sweating and he has a high fever, and that all he can say is that he wants the Spider-Man toy. And he was saying this as dramatic as possible, as if he was about to meet God himself in a few minutes unless he got it. Well, my mother was not having it. She promptly and very angrily told her that I was asleep and I had to wake up at 7 in the morning, and that it was not only dangerous to go out at night to do some stupid stuff like this, but driving while sleepy was also very, very dangerous. And after that, my mom said goodnight and hung up the phone. Now, you might think this is the end of it, but not even 20 minutes later, my cousin's mother is at the front gate of our house honking the horn, demanding once again that we hand over the Spider-Man toy. But my mom simply was not having it. She stated that she would not give her the toy, and that her kid would just have to deal with it and learn to take no for an answer. And to this day, even though several years have passed since that incident, this entitled mother still hates my mom as well as me to this day. How weird can you possibly get? I mean, this lady seriously drove at 2 in the morning to try and steal this original poster's toy, all because their spoiled child was pretending to be sick just so they could have this toy for themselves. I mean, how obnoxious can you get? And clearly this kid is just playing his mom. He has got her wrapped around his finger so easily, this kid can absolutely get whatever he wants. And that is so bad for a kid growing up. And I mean, the proof is right there. This guy is now now 28 years old, and his mom still cuts up his food for him. Like, this guy needs a wake-up call big time. So good for the original poster's mother for laying down the law and saying, no, your kid can't have this. Because caving to that demand would have been absolutely tragic. Because there's honestly no good excuse for showing up at that time, demanding something that is honestly so frivolous. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for helping some nurses put an entitled Karen in her place? So today, my 6-year-old son unfortunately hurt his hand, probably a broken finger, but we will see what the x-rays say. My wife collected him from his school holiday program and took him to the emergency room with our infant daughter in tow. She rang me at work to let me know what was going on. The wait in the emergency room was expected to be a few hours, so I told my wife I'd swing by home after work and collect some snacks with our son's iPad to keep him entertained. I'd also take our daughter back home, so I locked up work, picked up the iPad and some snacks, and went to the medical center. By this time, my wife and kids had been there a couple of hours. I checked the waiting room and they had been called back already, so I went to the main desk to find my way to them. Behind the counter were 2 nurses, and the younger one was in tears. The other one was consoling her, so apparently I had just missed quite the show. They had just put an entitled Karen into a vacant doctor's room. She had been making a scene in the waiting room, hurling all sorts of horrible statements around, complaining about the waiting time. The younger nurse had tried to explain that they are a trauma center, and patients were seen in the order of their severity, not necessarily in the order in which they arrive. But this entitled Karen was having none of it, and berated the junior nurse to the point where she was crying. The entitled Karen may have thought that she'd won at this point, getting into an examination room, but all she had really achieved was sitting on her own while she waited. The nurse saw me at the desk. I gave my son's name to her and explained that I'm just here to drop off some things and get the baby. The nurse said she's in room 5 and she'll take me down there. And that's when the older nurse stepped in and told the junior nurse to take me past room 2, where the entitled Karen was simmering away in her fury. She then asked me a favor. Can you pretend you're a patient for us? We just need you to walk past this room. So I decided, okay, and I agreed. I work in retail, and I understand the desire to troll a Karen. The nurse smiled and I followed her down the corridor. The nurse motioned to me as we approached room 2. I put on a limp and hobbled past the open door. Inside was the Karen, dressed to the nines, scrolling through her phone and impatiently tapping her foot on the floor. We locked eyes and I struggled to hide a smirk. Once we had just passed out of Karen's sight, I said to the nurse, "Thank you for getting me in so quickly. I thought I'd be waiting all night with this sprained ankle." And it was loud and clear, with all the fake grimaces I could muster. The nurse couldn't hide her glee. "No trouble," she replied through a massive grin. "The doctor will see you right away." The reaction was immediate. An almighty scream of frustration erupts from room 2. Then the phone flies out the door, clattering against the wall on the opposite side of the corridor. The nurse and I kept going down the corridor to where my wife and children were waiting. I checked in on everyone, dropped off the snacks, and grabbed our daughter to take her home. I then walked back down the corridor past room 2 again. The Karen was still there, now on her feet and pacing around the room. I caught her eye again and acknowledged her with a nod. As I strode past, my limp mysteriously gone. I saw the fire ignite in her eyes again as I went past, and her rage continued as I went back out through the waiting area, waving to the 2 nurses as my daughter and I left the building. I am glad I was able to help out the nurses in dealing with this Karen. Nobody deserves to be berated in their workplace like that. In hindsight though, despite her attitude, the entitled Karen may have had some legitimate reason for being there at the doctor's, and I could have been trolling someone genuinely needing help. So it begs the question, am I the jerk for doing what I did for the nurses? I don't think you're the jerk at all. The way she was acting was incredibly inappropriate, and there's no reason to freak out like that and to act like such a jerk. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. But what do you think? Would you have gone along with what the nurse requested, or would you have just wanted to get to the room with your family? Let us know down below. Today, I messed up by making fun of a guy who doesn't know how to do his own laundry, and as a result, he is incredibly offended. Here's what happened. So I started seeing this guy about 3 weeks ago. Now let me be clear, we have known each other for a long time because he was a friend of my cousin. He asked me out a few weeks ago and I said yes. I have known him since I was like 15. I also know his family too because our moms were colleagues. So anyway, he came to my house 5 days ago to pick me up because we were having a picnic date. I was in the living room watching the kids show Phineas and Ferb. I really like this show. I have been watching the reruns ever since I was a kid. This cartoon had a huge impact on my life. I still watch it whenever my mood is off, so that I can still cling on to the innocent child inside me. I was laughing at some part of the show, and he was standing next to me, and it looked like he was a little confused based on his expression. He asked me if my nephew was in the house, and I told him no. He then asked me who it is that's watching this cartoon, since all of my family members are adults. So I told him that I'm watching it, and I really like this cartoon. I then proceed to tell him that I still watch this particular cartoon because it was a part of my childhood, and I have some good memories linked to it. He told me it is really embarrassing and ridiculous, and when he said this, I asked him why, and that's when he told me something that really offended me. He told me that I'm a 24-year-old woman. Why am I watching something for kids? He also then said that I need to grow up, and when he said this really bothered me because I don't think there's an age limit to watching cartoons. Since that day, he would constantly make fun of me. Whenever we go to a restaurant, he would jokingly order from the kids menu. He would talk to me in a baby voice as if I was a kid, and whenever I would tell him to stop, he would say, "Oh, are you gonna get mad? That's cute." And sometimes even use phrases like "young lady." It was really frustrating. Today, we went to a party, and his friends were there too. I was meeting them for the first time. He introduced me. He then tells them how I still watch cartoons, and they all laughed. He also made fun of my height too. For context, I'm 5'4", and he is 6'1". He then proceeds to shuffle my hair like most people do on kids, and I got mad. I then told him, it's funny how he makes fun of me being a kid, yet he still needs his mommy to do his laundry. And when I said that, his smile just wiped off of his face. I further said, well, at least this kid knows how to clean up after herself and knows how to drive, unlike him, who failed the driving test 2 times. And after I said that, the room went completely silent. Later, when I got home, I got calls from my cousin that I overreacted and that I embarrassed him in front of his friends, while also claiming that he was right to make fun of me because who watches cartoons when they are adults? I told her I am not interested in entertaining boys who feel like they can make fun of anyone they want, but when someone does the exact same thing to them, they act like little babies. And that was probably the shortest relationship I have ever had in my life. That guy the original poster was dating is absolutely toxic. I mean, seriously, you're dating a woman that you're just now getting to know, and you're seriously gonna start making fun of her even after she said, hey, could you cut it out? And it would be one thing to do it in private, where it's just little jabs at each other that maybe you need to reel in because it's offending her or something like that. But he decided, you know what, I'm going to embarrass her in front of all my friends. Like, that's not a good characteristic to have, and it doesn't make you a good person. Instead, this guy turned into a giant bully, and just like most bullies, they cannot take what they're dishing out. So in my opinion, it was fantastic to hear that the original poster gave this guy a taste of his own medicine. Probably doesn't feel very good, now does it? So I think you dodged a massive nightmare, because if there's anyone in this situation who is clearly not grown up, I would be more than willing to put my money on this guy, just with how sensitive he is and how easily offended he became. My boss gave me criticism, claiming that I was making others uncomfortable, while also never providing me with any example so that I can try to adjust my behavior. So in protest, I decided to stop talking, and because of my lack of participation, the entire office went into a tailspin, causing massive damages that I easily could have fixed. Here's what happened. So about 10 years ago, I worked in a team of scientists, when one day our boss told me others perceive me as contemptuous. I was shocked beyond words. I certainly did not feel superior or feel contempt for anyone. I was so flabbergasted, I was silent for probably 2 solid minutes. I asked for an example of when something I had said or done gave someone that feeling. He said he couldn't divulge that information. Okay, then I asked for an example that he experienced or observed himself. He said that he had none. So I said to him, since I have no clue what I've done, how am I supposed to adjust my behavior? And he said he didn't know. So I said, basically then, I just need to not talk. And he said he wasn't sure. I knew right then and there what to do. I am pretty introverted, and as a child, I didn't talk for years. I rarely spoke up until I was about 13 years old. I got lots of notes from teachers about how quiet I was. I would answer questions when directly asked, but rarely spoke up otherwise. So my malicious compliance in this situation was easy for me. I just stopped talking, except when asked a question. I made a point of smiling, showing that I was listening, as well as nodding in agreement or anything else with a conversation conversation. I was extremely polite and agreeable. Pretty soon, some big issues came up that I had specific knowledge about. I knew how to solve them, but no one else asked me. A huge conflict came up between two of our labs because one group wanted it one way and the other group had a different opinion. They fought and fought. People were having secret meetings in their offices to try and win this situation. And when they finally arrived at the action they chose, it was wrong. In fact, both groups were wrong, and the whole experiment failed. It is important to know that no one was hurt, no property damage or anything like that, just a lot of wasted time and expense on materials. But I never said a word, and this went on for 3 weeks. The lab's budget had to be revised. They had to cut travel expenses, which I was okay with, because I didn't want to travel anyways. So no conferences for anyone. Now, this is a big deal for a lot of researchers, because it's how we gain notoriety to be able to get grants, among other things. Finally, a colleague asked me why I hadn't spoken for so long. Why was I so quiet? Was something wrong? I then explained about being told others perceive me as contemptuous. She had the same expression I did when I was told this. She said she didn't believe anyone had said that about me. I honestly was surprised again, because I believed our boss. Then she asked me what I thought about the experiment design and why it was failing. I told her about the solution that I believe would work, which was actually surprisingly simple. She recognized it had a good chance of succeeding and asked me to share the idea at the next department meeting. At that meeting, she asked me again in front of everyone, and I repeated what I told her. Several people asked why I hadn't spoken up sooner. I explained that I had been given feedback that indicated I caused others to feel uncomfortable. The whole table of colleagues also looked stunned at me. I said I was committed to not causing such bad feelings, and I couldn't figure out how to communicate because the feedback didn't give me any specific guidance. Everyone looked at the director at that point, and he said we shouldn't discuss personal issues. But it was my issue, so I said, if anyone here perceives me as contemptuous and said as much to our boss, that's the reason I haven't been talking. If you don't feel that way about me, let me know and I will stop being silent. Someone else said that we needed to hold a vote so that there wouldn't be any more confusion or talking behind anyone's back. They voted 100% for me to talk normally and that they didn't agree that I was ever contemptuous. That director slowly stopped coming to work, month by month after this episode, until he was only showing up 1 day a week. Finally, he took a lab position elsewhere, and one of my colleagues was promoted to director, and the experiment was a success. The next year, I got a grant to keep the research going and paid for 2 people to be able to travel to the related conference to present our findings. So overall, things kind of worked out in the end. That boss is an absolute piece of garbage. The fact that they would not only make up this kind of criticism, but then also not give you any examples to try and help you adjust your behavior is incredibly toxic. They quite literally caused so much damage to this lab by basically lying to this person, or at least projecting their own feelings onto this person and pointlessly causing conflict. I mean, that is an awful director, manager, whatever you want to call them. And I am really glad that you addressed this publicly and got it out in the open, because this kind of behavior is absolutely ridiculous. And if I was in the shoes of the original poster, I would have done the same thing. Oh, I'm being contemptuous? All right, fine, I just won't talk anymore. Let's see how far you guys can get. Because how can someone possibly change if they're never told how to change? So honestly, it's a good thing that terrible director got kicked out, because they clearly did not have your best interest in mind, and they honestly had no clue what they were doing. My manager constantly made fun of us and pitted us against each other as employees. So I quit my job without properly teaching him how to do my job or teach my coworkers how to fill in when he inevitably fails. Here's what happened. 3 years ago, I started working in a company where my manager was an absolute piece of garbage to me that would insult us and blame any problem on his employees, with the sole goal of trying to get us against each other. I got burned out after about a year, and this was after 10-hour days and weekends, where I would be performing tasks that were greatly above my paycheck and completely different from what I was promised as I got there. So I gave my resignations. My manager thought I was useless, as he often said about anyone but himself. So instead of trying to find a new employee, he decided he would have to take over my role, much to the demise of my coworkers. The only problem was, I was the only person who knew perfectly some of the ERP programs that the company uses, and I would have had to teach him my 1.5 years of experience in 2 weeks. As I started to teach him, he got more and more frustrated, as well as terrified by the amount of work workload that was coming his way, and as a result, he started to insult me even more. But I was still trying to teach him the best I could for the sake of my coworkers. All of this until the first day of my last week. I was pointing out a mistake that he was making every time he did a certain task, and he replied to me by screaming at me to shut up. I don't need you to act like a teacher. So, feeling petty, I decided to enact some malicious compliance. So instead of helping him out, I just sat beside him for the next and last 5 days, not teaching him anything. And every time he couldn't remember how to do something, I would jokingly cheer him up, telling him I was sure he could come up with the solution himself if he just focused enough. When problems would come up that I still didn't have the time to solve, I would tell him, I don't know how this thing happened. It never happened to me. You should contact the client service. They taught me everything I know. The peak of this was when he got so frustrated that he started repeatedly slamming the mouse against the desk and then sat there staring blankly at the screen for 10 minutes. I had to actually keep myself from laughing in his face. After I left, I spent the next 2 months getting called almost daily by all my ex-colleagues, asking for them to help me find files or to solve problems that they couldn't find an answer for, and stuff that I didn't have time to teach them as I had to stay with a manager all the time. But thankfully, I don't work there anymore, so I honestly could care less how that business goes. That is honestly how it should be done, in my opinion. If your manager is going to be that toxic to you and treat you like garbage on a daily basis, they can't possibly expect you to want to stick around. So truly, good riddance. You do not need that kind of energy in your life, and if any of your ex-coworkers are upset by the state of that office, they can look to your manager as the reason why things suck. Because if they just listened, they wouldn't be in this mess in the first place. And if they had actually treated their employees with respect, then just maybe one of the most valuable ones would have stuck around. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.